I'd like to call the meeting to order of the Board of Finance on January 19th, 2023. Welcome, everyone. First off,
can you state the time? Okay.
I'm sorry?
Can you state the time?
Oh, sure. 7:03.
I think it's February.
It's February.
Oh, did I say February?
January.
Oh, I was looking at the minutes. Oh, well, off to a good start.
Yeah, it's January 19th.
Exhale.
It was a very good year.
January.
Okay, way to out me. I mean, you know. Okay, well, let's go into seating of the alternates. I think I would nominate Lisa to be seated for Christina Milhouse.
Second.
Thank you, Joe. Seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Thanks, Lisa.
Sure.
And let's just move on. Let's move through the approval of the minutes. And that is January 19th, 2023. And this is February 16th, 2 days after Valentine's Day. Just want to, for the record. Are there any questions about the minutes? You guys had a minute to do your speed reading and see if that paid off. Any changes?
The minutes was a second.
I didn't have it. Hearing none. Is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion, we accept the minutes of January 19th, 2023. Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed?
Abstain.
Abstentions?
Abstain. Was on board.
2 abstentions? Okay.
I believe I have to do a roll call.
Okay.
Yeah, but nobody's online.
If you do a hybrid meeting, you have to.
Go ahead, it's good practice.
Was I right?
Okay. You're right.
You're right.
Jeff,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
Peter,
Abstain.
Lisa,
Yes.
Jim, Marshall,
First name.
what's everybody else? And Stephanie.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Present to speak. Are there any speakers? Yes, state your name, please, and your address.
Lisa Eaton, 38 Timber Lane. First, I'd like to thank all the committees involved in the process of bringing the school building project to a referendum. I recognize that this work requires considerable investment of time and expertise. I've been attentive and watching this process unfold. It's been exciting to see progress being made in moving our schools into a 21st century built environment. Through these observations, however, one thing in particular has stood out that I have found concerning. I very naively assumed that once the SBC supported an option, this option would, of course, go to referendum. Naturally, I thought that ultimately the decision to support a new school would lay in the hands of the townspeople. Through each step of this process, however, there have been attempts by a small yet vocal group to stop or otherwise delay bringing the school building to a referendum, effectively denying the opportunity for the townspeople to vote. Arguments for stopping the referendum range from baseless charges of corruption to a lack of transparency and to a lack of engagement efforts to inform the public on the details of the school. Let's be very clear on what is factual. There are 56 video and audio recorded meetings rich with details spanning over a 2-year time period posted on YouTube. These meetings have also provided numerous present to speak opportunities. SBC representatives also have led a community presentation event at Hall School, held 6 community engagement events throughout the town, including the library, senior center, center school, and the town office, a community public forum event at Hall School. Representatives also partook in multiple engagement events at the transfer station. Moreover, the SBC has sent multiple mailers to every household in town, mailers that provided details on the school building process. The mailers and social media were also used to promote uptake of a survey to gather thoughts, concerns, and preferences from the townspeople regarding the school buildings. Paper surveys were also placed around the town at the town hall, library, hall school, and senior center. Some SBC members have even made themselves available to answer questions on social media. I state unequivocally, the SBC representatives have done their due diligence in engaging the townspeople and have provided every reason to be confident that this behavior of providing information and making themselves available will continue leading up to the referendum and beyond. The repeated argument made to stop or delay bringing the school building project to referendum because the townspeople have not been engaged lacks credibility in the face of evidence. In my opinion, it is clear that people who are trying to stop or delay the process do so with the hope that the referendum will not ever occur, or that it'll be delayed to the point where the grant deadline with the state has been missed. And I don't even necessarily blame people for working this angle, as it's clear from the data that the project has the potential to pass, and stopping the referendum is effectively a last-ditch effort to catapult the project, but it doesn't make it right. There is a very important distinction to be made here. If you do not want to see progress made on the school building project, you are a no vote. That is your right as a citizen of the town, of course, assuming that the referendum occurs. That is, however, conceptually and categorically very different from trying to stop the entire town from voicing their desire or not for a new school building through a vote. When I first moved here, I learned that there was interest in town to build a new school. That was over 10 years ago. It is time to let people vote and to let people vote in March. Board of Finance, please do not engage in actions that would stop or delay this vote. Also, as a side note, in regards to last night's meeting, I found the document that Ralph presented to be somewhat unwieldy. The parameters it's based on appear too fluid to be considered robust predictors of future tax burden. And most importantly, if the concern is truly to reduce confusion, this document does the opposite, encouraging people to access their tax burden information based on the actual known expense of the building is a much clearer approach. Thank you.
Thank you. Your comments are written. I mean, would you mind sharing them with the board, like emailing them to us?
Absolutely.
We can talk about that afterwards, if that's all right. You can check with Samantha. Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else present to speak? Michelle Cunningham.
Michelle Bissett Cunningham, 41 Lister Road. I have 2 points I'd like to make tonight. One is first to thank all of you. Everyone who serves on a board or a commission in this town does so as a volunteer, because we love this town, we love the people in it, we want to see it grow and blossom into the town that we know that it has the potential to be. We love it already, and we just want to see it better. And I know that this is one of a ton of meetings you guys are doing this time of year. This is added burden on top of the regular budget process. And I want to thank you for your volunteerism and coming forward with this. And because of that, I want to call out some of the both misinformation and, quite honestly, insulting social media posts I've been seeing recently. It really, really is offensive to me as a citizen that people are calling out well-intentioned volunteers who are working hard to do their due diligence, assigning, evil motives to them and accusing them of things that just are not true and have no evidence or basis in fact, just because they disagree with a person. And I find that that's really insulting. It makes people lose faith in local government. We have a town meeting government, and I love that about us. We really get to know each other. We see each other. We have a sense of community that we don't have in bigger places. But that should also mean that we have a higher burden of civility. We live with each other. We're neighbors. We know each other. And we should maintain that level of civility. So I ask that whoever's watching on screen tonight, whoever's watching the video, please remember that this is, even if you feel emotional about it, it's very important to maintain your calm and your cool factual, logical approach to this. And I appreciate the fact that this committee is bringing that approach to the financial aspects of this. Certainly, it's essential that we have all of the facts and figures so that every individual voter can make their best decision. And by putting out misinformation, misleading information, information that causes people to have an emotional negative response is irresponsible. And I want to call that out on the record, that that is not helpful, and it is not helping the community in the way that you think you are. I know that you are coming to this, anybody who does so because you feel strongly about the community too. I'm not going to impugn your motives. You love Willington too, and you love your kids, you love the people in this town, and you want to do what's best. But let us all make our own decisions based on good quality information. So that's the first point. The second point is I just want to urge everyone, especially in a committee that is as complicated as the financial aspects of building a new school, to try and keep our expectations realistic, because in reality, there are a million moving parts. We can't predict where any of us are going to be 5 years from now. We couldn't have predicted 5 years ago what would have happened over the last 5 years. We can only do the best we can. We do not know what's going to happen next. And by trying to create models that include 800 moving pieces, and sometimes cherry picking which of those moving pieces you like best and want to promote is not useful. So if you can, as much as possible, keep the number of moving pieces to a minimum so that we can have something to compare it to. I have a degree in economics, so this is not something that is complicated for me. And I've been one of those people working on this for more than 10 years on the Board of Education. It is still complex to me. So if we can provide information that is straightforward and a comparison that's more helpful than saying, well, what if, and what if, and what if, and what's the worst possible and the best possible. It's important to give everyone full information, but full information is often worse than adequate, straightforward information. Let's not make it any more complicated than it has to be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ma'am? Can I get your name one more time? I'm sorry, I missed it.
Lisa.
Lisa?
Eaton. E-A-T-O-N.
Thank you.
Okay, present to speak. Anyone else in the room? Anyone else online?
We have one online.
Oh, is there one online? I'm sorry, sorry. What? Okay. Is it?
It's Nick.
Is it Nick? Nick Teller?
Yes. Yeah. It's Nick Teller, 49 Myrtle. Can you hear me well?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. So I just want to start off with some of the reasons why people have no trust, is due to the shady behavior that's been going on with the SBC. I won't go into details since it's very well known to people between Erica profiting and Mike getting hooked up with a Board of Selectmen seat after leading the charge to get her family's property. So besides that here, much of the information coming from the SBC has been misleading to make the new school look like it's a great project. And I get it. They, 8, 9 people on that board, they want this project. They're doing everything they can to get it through. So I understand their motive too. But, they had flyers going out there saying there's only one disadvantage to a new school. And when they showed the tax information, they didn't do a very good job explaining that it was cumulative. Just a tactic to kind of lessen how bad this really is going to be. I just want to say, the SBC calculator, it fails to include all government spending, and it only focuses on the spending of the school. Mike had even acknowledged that today throughout the day. Raoul's calculator is very detail oriented, and he put a lot of time in there. I really think you guys should give that some weight there. Just to say that rushing a $65 million project is reckless. I hope the Board of Finance can inform the SBC to fulfill its charge. I believe it's D10, if I'm correct, in regards to finding out the purpose of both schools and the costs that are going to be associated with that. Because the Board of Finance needs to know the total costs around this project, not just the 28.6 or the 34.7, but everything moving forward. ultimately, I think we should be making the repairs in segments where the mill rate won't take a drastic hit to the people in town. Moving away from Hall is going to put the foundation having to pay probably around $120,000 a year, if not more, in property tax, which I can't imagine them being able to afford, being that most of their financial data online seems to be that they have $60,000 to $70,000 in assets. And a lot of their money comes from URI and just different institutions donating to them. I just don't think that's the way we treat people in town that have been looking out for us for a while. And what does that look like to other people that want to invest in Wellington, that Wellington's willing to turn their back on people that have helped out the town? I also just want to touch upon one other thing. I did submit a FOIA request to Town Hall. Items that are directly relating to the Board of Finance is email communications and selecting James Marshall as a Board of Finance member and communications to his appointment to the school building committee. Email communications from Stephanie Summers to the SBC going back to the last 3 months. Email communications from Stephanie Summers to Michael McHugh going back 3 months. And there's some other stuff that may have to do with Board of Finance, but those are the main ones. And that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else to speak? Yes.
Hi, Alan Ayers, 38 Timber Lane.
Alan, your last name again?
Ayers. Yes, go ahead.
You know, I'm so thankful for everything you guys have done, and I kind of feel guilty about even coming up here and delaying this process a little bit more by talking, but I feel like it's something I really had to do. So I've been following these meetings for a long time. And present to speak is just, for me, it's been just filled with negative people showing up. There just haven't been enough positive people. And a lot of people just don't have, like, they feel like they can't, they don't want to talk. This is uncomfortable for me to come up here and do so. So I wanted to reach out to some people just like in the last 24 hours. And I made a statement and I asked people to co-sign it. I said, I will do this for you. And so, you know, these are people that don't care about all this other nonsense. So the statement is, we believe that Wellington needs a new school. We are aware that our personal tax liability in this project were to go to referendum and pass. We are, however, concerned that efforts are being made to delay or stop the referendum and feel that further hearings are unwarranted and redundant, that they will likely not reach citizens who haven't already engaged after months of encouragement in many forms of media to do so. Moreover, a town meeting will be scheduled for questions and answers approximately 2 weeks prior to the referendum. We believe that there has been an abundance of information provided, and it's time to put the decision to the people by way of referendum. We feel that the Board of Finance should do their due diligence, but be mindful of the amount of time and commitment by multiple boards, hired experts, and commissions used to get to where we are today, and to move this forward to referendum without delay. This message is co-signed and commissioned by the following residents: Catherine Kenyon, Amy Shirazi, Kristen Farrar, Jeff Farrar, Carolyn Saros, Greg Saros, Ayla Saros, Sarah J. Anderson, William Viveros, Matthew Sandness, Christine Sandness, Beth Bean, Laura Sempervon, Brian Sempervon, Christopher Hughes, Una Devtan, Brian Allison, Kristen Bryant, Jason Ross, Sarah Geary, Chris Geary, Catherine Viveros, Amy Redding, Sean Redding, Josie Redding, Doris Bacon, Peter Bacon, Tina Gunaris, Shannon Baribeau, John Mitchell, Jenna Mitchell, Donna Durno, Nick Gunaris, Barbara Gunaris, Jennifer Sutton, Daniel Iancampo, Michael Iancampo. That's 37 people, and me is 38. People that understand their burden and are ready to move forward. I just wanted those people to get on record, you know, being present to speak versus all these, you know, people showing up and saying that only, you know, 36 people talked during the forum and 26 were negative. Well, here's 37 right here positive. It's just that simple. You know, 24 hours. Thank you. I mean, people will talk about the fact that we had a forum and 26 people spoke against it, but you know, we had the survey too. We'll pretend like that didn't happen. And people were very, very adamant about making sure that they got the results from the survey, and then they stopped mentioning it. It didn't work in their favor. Thank you.
Could we have a hard copy, or do you want to keep your original? We can. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, Sam. Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak? Anyone online who would like to speak?
Nobody else has their hand raised.
What's that?
Nobody else has their hand raised.
Okay, thanks. Thank you for your eyes. Okay, I think we can move to the next thing then. And that is the roadshow. Thank you for, I want to welcome Mike McCoo, the chair of the SBC, and Phil Stevens, the school superintendent in town. And I just want to echo what other people have been saying about the tenacity you and your group has been putting forth on this project for 2 years. And I haven't seen every single meeting, although I kind of want to make it into a serial, you know, and see it like, you know, but in particular, the meeting that I would still recommend everyone to go watch for a real good steeping and everything, February 1st, when people had some agony over a choice, but all spoke eloquently about where they were on the issue and what they had put together over 2 years of study in voting the way they did. And I just want to thank you guys for your tireless efforts and all that you work with on that group.
Thank you for the introduction. I'm Mike McCoo. I think most of you people know me. As this board knows, for about 2 years now, this board has had a representative to the school building committee, which until January was me. And I've been replaced by James Marshall when I moved off of this board. Over this approximately 2 years, the school building committee has been chipping away at its charge. And I think we all have a pretty good idea of where we are, but basically what has happened is we've evaluated a lot of different factors in determining what to recommend to the townspeople. And through that process, we have, particularly notably at the February 1st meeting, made a selection, which was not a unanimous vote, but it was an 8-2 vote to put forward a recommendation to do a new school on a new piece of property. There were a lot of reasons that factored into that. That's why we have a board with a diversity of input and a lot of public input. And that was a combination of the various skill sets on the board, the work of the consultant, and the public input that was determined that motion passed with a majority based on all of that input to put this forward. So going from February 1st to the 3rd, we added the optional, we talked that night about did the people want an auditorium or not, and the fact that was approximately $6 million extra. And we wrestled a little that night with information about how we could or should not include that question. And so we sought some advice over the next couple of days. February 3rd, we had a special meeting and added the second question, which you have all seen, which is basically giving the people the option to select if they do pick to do this and approve to do this, would they also then want to do the auditorium? So it essentially comes to 2 questions. And from that point, February 1st and 3rd to tonight, we've continued on the process, which brings us here to kind of show you where we are, what we've done with all of this input, and really mostly focus on the financial stuff. Obviously, that's why we're at the Board of Finance. And obviously, the finances are a huge part of the public's interest and concerns about this project because, let's face it, it's very expensive. We have this short presentation that will go through the slides. The image you see at the beginning here is a preliminary concept. It's not by any means a final design. This places a school that meets the requirements so far of what we have for concept and square footage, and most importantly, derived from the ed spec or specification from the Board of Ed. You can see on the screen that it provides the field space, the school space, the parking space. It accommodates some of the important public feedback we've had about the difficulties of mingling parent drop-off traffic and school bus traffic. You can see sort of just below the building in that image, it may be hard to see, but there's a yellow line which represents the school buses. And there's a black dotted line here, which represents the parent loop. So they're divided, so they're not overlapping each other. It provides all the spaces. It provides the ability to bring natural light in to the building. And it is set in a hill. The side to the right with the fields would be essentially 1 story higher than the side to the left, which means both levels of the school have egresses that go out onto ground level, which is advantageous for safety reasons for how the school can place the students in the rooms and throughout the school. And it means there's nowhere that's more than taller than 2 stories, so it keeps the building from being some sort of a grand edifice in a residential neighborhood. It's also set back. You can see the length of the driveway. There are 4 houses along Glass Factory Road right here, and there are woods in the back. And as part of the tentative agreement with the seller of this property, on top of the fact that there would be zoning requirements, we have promised to maintain a buffer so that there would provide we would keep this natural buffer area here as a courtesy and as a good neighbor sort of a thing. So that's just a quick overview of essentially what the project looks like. That is encompassing approximately 20 acres, which is about what the state says for this calculation you would need. The property is much larger, which would allow us the opportunity to spread out things throughout the property that we might need to spread out. If there's future uses, if the town wants to use passive or active recreation areas, more importantly, to spread out things like wells and septic systems that we may want to spread across the property, particularly when we're considering what the effect might be on the local water by drawing water into the school through wells, being able to get away from neighbors' houses and all that. So that's some of the reasons that this larger piece of property is advantageous to us. It's also advantageous because of its location geographically in town. Also has, of the larger pieces, a fairly limited slope. And at this point, our test borings so far have found ledge in a couple locations, but no closer than 18 feet below the surface, which is not concerning at this point.
I'm sure this is a question that was answered at one of your many informational meetings that I did not attend because I attend enough board meetings now. But this is not anywhere near our public water supply that we're already paying for, like for the other buildings?
It is not anywhere near public water supply, right?
Thank you.
Right, public water supply is on Old Farms Road and a short section of Route 32. That's it.
All right.
Mike, can I just ask you, would you rather have questions as you go, or would you rather us hold them until the end, or?
I'm fine with questions.
Okay.
So we'll get moving on this, and that may bring up some more questions or get us to the end, and then we can do more questions.
Okay.
Okay, so this is just sort of a high-level overview of the project. As you can see, most of you have seen these bullet points before. 21st century learning environment. And keep in mind, that's not just a static date. 21st century, we're not just looking to get to the 21st century and then stop there. There's also the concept that this building is potentially a 50 to 100 year decision. So
then we'll abandon it later.
Designed to address short and long-term deficiency, updates mechanical systems, air quality. We learned a lot through COVID, obviously. We still have spaces in the current schools that have zero air circulation because they were built in an era when you put a radiator on the wall and you heated the radiator. And that's how you warmed the room. And that was perfectly effective, but doesn't allow for air movement or filtration or anything like that. Newer, more efficient equipment reduces operational maintenance expenses, starts a brand new building, obviously completely up to code. Even the codes that are sort of grandfathered right now in the existing buildings would all go away as we move to a new building. One of the big ones for the educational environment is ADA. Buildings like Center School and Hall School, it's just not physically possible to make them completely accessible. The new building would essentially be completely accessible. Maximizing natural light, as I said before, latest security and safety measures. Everybody knows school security is not only a concern, but a requirement to some levels with the state. And the ability to build that into existing buildings is challenging and expensive. Obviously, this one would be designed from the ground up with those features built into it. Great example for anyone who goes to the schools is right now, you come up to the door, you ring a bell, there's a camera, you have to get in the right place, you have to tell your name, they have to decide if they should buzz you in or come out. Any of these kind of projects would provide essentially a vestibule that you would be in with a window directly accessible by the office staff. So they could screen the person more effectively and decide if they come in the building or not, just as an example. State grant requirements. This is big for the conversation here because obviously the idea of funding a project completely on Wellington taxpayers versus funding a project with reimbursement from the state is a huge difference. And then we have essentially two different levels of funding, as you've all been hearing about. You have a percentage that they will fund of eligible reimbursement. And then you have the potential of a waiver because we have a space that will be larger than the number. If you see the middle bullet there, the initial building size comes out at, according to the state's formula, comes out at 57,654 square feet. We can't fit the ed spec requirements into that square footage. So we are over, which creates a penalty basically. And it also means they're not going to do reimbursement. That's sort of the penalty. They won't do reimbursement for the larger area. And if you keep going over, they start actually backing off your percentage for being oversized. The reason we can't get down to 57,654 square feet is that in a small school, small town environment, when you're basing square footage on the total number of students, you start losing out. The curve doesn't follow you when you get to a smaller group because, like, for example, a corridor is only a certain minimum size. And if you have 420 students using that corridor versus 500 students using that corridor, it might be the exact same amount of corridor. But if you have 500 students, you get 81 more people to divide the square footage amongst, which moves your allowed number up with the state. So small schools are essentially penalized. The calculation doesn't work. Conversations have been ongoing with the Office of School Grant Review, OSCGR, and they have admitted that the formula doesn't work for smaller schools. The only solution that's available right now is a waiver. Unfortunately, we can't do the waiver until we apply. We apply and then we apply for the waiver. So we have to go into this looking at what is the full cost of the project. That's why the motions that you've seen talked about already have the full cost of the project, because that's the commitment. Then we have a reimbursement that is essentially known. And then we have this other waiver factor that we won't know until we make the application. Next.
Can I just ask you?
Please.
So the state share, you said it's known. I just wonder, is that ever a fragile contract with the state, or is that pretty much?
That's pretty reliable. Okay. We have a percentage 53.21, I think is the number. Yeah. You can't apply the 53.21 to the entire cost of the project because certain costs in the project are simply not eligible for the reimbursement. So it's 53.21 of the eligible, which is of course the majority of the dollars, but not every single thing factors. There are other questions.
Do we have Scott online with you guys, or he's not? Or
I don't think we have Scott.
Are you able to speak at all about your discussions about the waiver? And I know it's not guaranteed ahead of time, but your confidence, or Scott's confidence as he deals with these on a regular basis.
Well, I think it would be it'd be foolish for me to say I feel good that we're going to get the waiver. That will be another one of 50 things I'll be skewered about in the public square. But I will say that Scott feels pretty confident, and he has done a lot of schools and has been involved in this a lot of times. So he has a track record to understand, and he feels that the likelihood we get a waiver is good.
Yeah, and I understand he can't professionally give any.
He's not going to completely pin his tail on that donkey.
What I'm trying to get a sense of is, because I have a sense of it is, how frequently these are pursued and how frequently they are confirmed or denied, by the CGR in the end. So
he feels pretty encouraged about it, and the fact of the matter is there are kind of some steps to that. You know, there's sort of the initial step of applying for it, and then there's the possibility of engaging, you know, with local legislative assistants to try to help champion that effort along. Some communities have succeeded in engaging their legislative help to get even higher than the percentage that's in the formula and the waiver. You know,
I think that's happened in a town nearby.
It has happened in a town nearby, hasn't it? So these are all possibilities, but there's no way we can commit to knowing that number right now.
Can I just say,
please?
I think the biggest thing that it's not really the state, it's not really Scott that can say, it's the state. And the best comment the state said to us, because I was in the meeting, was we understand going from 2 schools into 1 pre-K through 8th grade building, our calculator does not work for you. Because we took off about 20, we just started eliminating things to show them what would be eliminated. And they said, we're at 67,000 square feet. We're not even close to your 57,000 square feet. We have no principal's office. We have no nurse's office. They fully understood. They just can't say, we're going to guarantee that you're going to get a waiver. But at the table, they acknowledge this calculation doesn't work for what you're trying to accomplish.
And on the flip side, and correct me because I wasn't in that meeting, on the flip side, they also said, with a population this small, we are a little reticent about funding renovation projects unless they come out significantly cheaper than new. And we're also reticent about funding projects for 2 schools. They want us in a single school, right? That's what they said. They want us in a single school, and unless we can be way cheaper on the renovation, they don't want us renovating an old space. They want us in a new school, a single school. So they're, and again, that's not a hard, fast, this is a checkbox, we will only do this, but it was strong hints, very strong hints given in the meeting, in an official meeting. So that just sort of all gets collected into all the other feedback that we have about what direction to take this project. And
surprisingly enough, that's the core charge for the whole SBC project.
To define a pre-K through 8 solution. Yeah. So go ahead. Read the first number again. 51. The percentage is 53.21%. The percentage is a little higher if we did a renovation. That's 60.
It's 10 points higher.
It's about 10 points higher, yeah. But still, when you do the math out, because of the complications of doing, that's why they give you more in renovations, because it's more complicated. It's still, this still was the least expensive. Between renovation or new, this was still less expensive by about 20%. By a lot.
Right.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of items that do not qualify for.
Right. Right.
Could you just give it one example of that, just for that doesn't qualify in a renovation?
I think one of the things we talked about is it's like replacement of items. So there's, and someone chime in, if there's a replacement of certain items, you're just replacing the item and you're not going to be reimbursed on it. It's a certain percentage of the building. It's another convoluted thing the state does. So if you're doing one project, and I guess this is the way to share it, if you're doing one project like the windows, I've always given this example, only a certain part of that project qualifies for reimbursement, like the window, but not the construction to install the window. There are all sorts of convoluted rules like that. It's the same thing with a renovation project. So if you're not going to renovate everything, you're not going to get your maximum 63%. They're going to knock you down based upon the percentage that you're doing, and it becomes kind of a replacement model. Very, very different. And that's what made it more expensive than new. If you want to add to that, or I'll move that.
Jim, do you feel comfortable jumping in with your own view on likelihood of waiver? You sort of coyly flirted with it.
And you just sucked them right into it.
Yeah, I mean, geez. No, so, you know, my understanding is the waivers exist for the reasons that both Mike and Phil mentioned. There is a handicap, for lack of a better word, for school districts with low enrollment, because they need all of those same functions and utilities that a larger school needs, even if areas differ. but they don't get the per pupil state reimbursement, you know, that a larger school district would. So if you have a 1,200 student enrollment, they're getting a few per pupil funding or reimbursement rate but they still need all of those same facilities. They need a cafeteria. They need, you know, administrative offices that would match. You still need those with a 400 student count, even if the square footages differ. There's, you know, you're penalized, which is why there is a mechanism to address it. It's been repeated time and time again. There is, you know, it's that cart before the horse sort of a scenario in a way. You know, it feels sick.
Yeah, the town has to commit to it, and you have to apply to it before you know if you're going to get it.
Yeah, but you know, and nobody can guarantee it, which is why I know the OPM, and I'm not willing to say we're going to get it because you know, there's no guarantee. But you know, the mechanism exists, and the other reason the mechanism exists because they are understanding of that, and each case is unique, and then we'll evaluate the merits of each instance accordingly. But
Steph, you have
Thank
other
you.
questions?
What?
You have other questions?
Pete?
Yeah, I know this is late in the process and you don't have time to evaluate this. And I was just wondering, we just heard that the state is trying to consolidate schools. And we just heard that we're being penalized for being a small district. Was any consideration being given to consolidating with a larger district so that there'd be one school, we wouldn't have that penalty? We could, did anybody go talk to it?
There have been a couple, and I'll let Phil talk more about this too. There have been a couple efforts in that as far as what was the interest in Willington. There also was discussion with the surrounding towns. There were all sorts of conversations going all the way back to collective bargaining issues where, like, say one town next door might be paying their teachers at a higher rate than we pay them. Right. And now you have a problem with teachers with seniority, but getting paid less, getting mixed in. Like, there are all sorts of layers to that onion. I don't know if you want to add anything to that.
Before you jump into consolidation, just to be clear, it's not, just for the record, it's not OSCGR that's looking to penalize small school districts. The formula is just.
Yeah, but it's their formula. So
correct. Yeah.
So it is that.
I don't want to say we're accusing OSCGR.
No, I am accusing them. I'm flat out accusing them. Their formula, they came up with it. I didn't even help them with it. But that answers my question. I know that but like we heard from Michelle earlier, there are many moving parts, and I just wanted to know if.
Yeah, I mean, there was everything from like busing times to a lot of complexities. I don't know. Did you want to add anything to that, Phil, or did I?
No. That answered my question. But you see where I'm going, where the state is trying to funnel you in one direction, and we're kind of swimming sideways against that direction.
I think that's part of our argument for a waiver.
That's right.
Yeah.
I think when we go to meet with OSCGR again at some point, our argument for them to approve a waiver is, look at you're promoting consolidation, we're consolidating. So in the way you share that is, if we do nothing and we maintain 2 schools and we do 2 whatever projects that they have to provide reimbursement on, they're providing reimbursement on 2 separate things. Whereas you go to 1 building, now they're only providing reimbursement on 1 building. And so that's kind of the pro consolidation piece that I think they get, but they won't tell us if they're going to approve that waiver or not. But that's part of our argument to them for sure.
But they, may I say something, Stephanie?
Sure.
But what they're not saying, that the state often, well, being somebody who works with the state a lot, what I heard just now was very interesting. I heard Mike say that the state, and Phil, what you just said, the state is saying the town needs to continue to invest in their education. And that's what I don't think anybody's really saying here. And here are your options based on the formulas that we have. But if you choose to not responsibly grow or responsibly improve, you know, the state can be there and start to force the issue of regionalization. What you're just saying consolidation is really regionalizing, which then I know all of you in this room have gone through the burden of Region 19, and you've heard those budgets that we just have to digest. But the state, we live in a state that's pro-responsible growth. So they're going to get that through their regulatory issues, right? I mean, I think that what Jim doesn't want to answer the question, you dance around the question because of course the state is going to say, well, I can't guarantee anything. We don't know this. Nobody's going to wink at you. I mean, everybody is very careful about being, you know, compliant, but to me, it just seems like, you know, how do we want to pay? Because we gotta grow responsibly. It's not just no. So I just
we're
want
gonna do everything possible to get the waiver.
That's right. And they have it in place on purpose.
Right. And I do, just in case I say something and people misconstrue it, there have been a couple times where I've referred to it as taxpayer money versus state money. Of course, we all know it's all taxpayer money.
Of course.
The difference being that obviously is what is the impact directly here in Willington on our budget, opposed to what can we get from the state, which is taxpayer money, but that money is going to go somewhere.
That's right.
Right?
That's
it's already
right.
come out of us. It's been wrung out of us, and it's going to go to somewhere. So let's get it back to Willington.
And the state isn't going to. I mean, the problem is that we're not going to get left behind, but we will get it handed to us if we don't responsibly move forward either. Like it could come to a point where they can say, look, you guys, you know, went down this path and now here's the only alternative. And it's very expensive, right?
So,
I mean, isn't that
Can I just
true?
give you the example? You're paying for Mansfield's new school.
That's right.
And Mansfield paid for our oil tank.
That's right. That's right.
That's what, when you talk about taxpayer dollars, that goes into the pot to get reimbursement back. We got a new oil tank at all school. A portion was paid by Wellington residents, a portion was paid from the state. That's what we, that's
from
what
our
we
168
Right. If you're not
towns.
savvy enough to go after it.
I
then-
also am very, very leery of the state, if it's not guaranteed, really counting on it heavily. We put up a lot of money for a new roof on Hall School. They promised to give us 66%, and then they snatched that back.
Right.
So I
Created a whole kerfuffle.
It did create a kerfuffle. That would be a good way of putting it. And so now we have no roof and we have no money from the state on that. And,
right,
you know, so saying it's guaranteed coming because wink, wink, we're a small school, wink, no.
No, I don't think.
No,
we're
I'm not
winking.
gonna count on it.
So I think that's why I was very clear that we don't know at this point.
And I
right?
appreciated that. Right. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but I
So-
also want to say that maybe the state, this is what I think I was trying to say. Maybe the state is saying, we're not going to support a new roof on an old building. Right? Because they still can tell you.
But they said they would, and then they said they wouldn't.
Right.
Well, maybe they.
So
that
do you mind if I just roll through the rest
No,
of the slides?
don't mind us.
So my presentation. So this slide talks about operational cost savings. This has been a topic that's been discussed for eons in the school project. You know, what will this lead to as far as savings? And you see the sections here. Some people in town have asked repeatedly for more detail. Phil is in a position where he can't go into more detail, like for example, about the staff. If he were to decide now, today, which staff need to go to get that number, he not only can't see where he's going to be in 2 years, but he also is going to send the message out to his staff, like this particular job or this particular type of employee is going to be gone. And of course, those people will be smart to get out of here, right? So we can't, Phil's been very clear, he can't go any deeper into that number right now because it just would be a poor strategic move and it would be difficult for him to continue running the school in the meantime. But the point is here, this $532,000 is the estimated reduction in operating costs. Now this brings up a whole question of where do we count that? Obviously that will show on the operating budget side. That doesn't show directly in this project, in the cost of this project of building it, right? So this is an operational budget side. So that led to a bunch of conversations about when we present to you the impact on the taxes, do we account for that or do we not account for that? And based on feedback we've been getting from the community about people, some people understanding, some people misunderstanding what we presented, we're trying to learn from that feedback. How are people receiving the information we're putting out? So we decided that what we're presenting to you tonight here, we will not count that reduction in the numbers we're giving you. So that number has to be factored into the conversation. It has to be factored into your conversation as the Board of Finance, but we are not going to take that 532 out of anywhere in the calculation. We're also not putting the budget growth in the calculation that we're going to show you first. We're doing a simplified thing, and that's coming. So
this may be the one place that understands that, because we kind of understand operating versus capital. You
right.
know,
it's an effect on the taxpayers, but it comes through different channels.
Yeah, but
right.
It's still a savings.
Right.
So you're basically you're going with
and that is going to come approximately in the year you move into the school.
Correct.
Okay. You know, I guess I was kind of wondering about transportation and energy, just because is it you know, you've gotten like great contract quotes on your utilities, Phil, when you're doing budgets and stuff, and it's kind of nothing short of amazing. But I'm wondering, are those figures conservative, Phil's side, or are those?
No, they're conservative estimates, and I'll be honest, the energy really came from Scott from Colliers.
Okay.
Looking at a square footage, even putting AC into an 80,000 square foot building, into the entire building, you're still going to see savings just because of no more single pane windows, just the way the building's
modern heating and cooling systems,
ventilation, all of those things. He still feels confident that with all the projects he completes, they still see energy savings even when the building is bigger and it didn't have any AC. So that's kind of the energy side of it. The transportation side, honestly, is diesel. I anticipate if we go to one building that we would have one schedule, one pre-K through 8th grade schedule, so all students would be in one loop, an AM run bus run and a PM bus run. Right now we have middle school, elementary, and those are two separate runs, and you're obviously using more diesel. And we know, based upon that number of what we expect, we can fit those students on the buses. So
we're anticipating the same number of buses?
Yes.
Full.
So,
full.
Yeah. All right, so next slide. So cost avoidance summary. This is another hot topic in town too. So this is definitely something pertinent to this meeting, to this group. This is the often talked about projects that were in the capital, that have been in the capital requests and we're getting lined up for funding before we entered into this planning for a new school project. And so what you're seeing here, this was updated to $2025, so the number has grown a little bit. Phil, could you explain why we're in $2025?
Yeah, so the top section is center schools, and this is totally cropped. So even though you see 3 lines for center school, that's top section, that's like line 75, 76, and 77. All right, it's not just 3 items. Just to put it onto one slide, this is from the prior report of all of the items they identified in 2017. And those are the items that they would have cost that amount in 2017. Scott has, with all the building projects that he's done, he's basically taken that number and he's escalated based upon what we're seeing now for these costs. So the top number is the center school number. And that's adjusted to $2025. Sorry, 2025. Yes, $2025. And you see the local share is your portion. It's the Wellington portion. And then the bottom section is Hall School. Again, that's many, many pages long. That's just the end of it to put it on one slide. So you add, sorry, I have to move you guys on.
So when he refers to Wellington share, he's talking about, again, assuming that grant funding is available for a portion. That total is reduced So in the case of Center School, it's $8.5 million total, but it's $6 million is the Willington share because it's assumed that reimbursement will cover the gap. Similar to the one down below. And it's only about $1 million difference on the one down below because that's all that was eligible for reimbursement.
There's a lot of projects do not qualify when you do them individually. It's just the way it is. Another caveat, just like those windows, there's weird things that qualify and weird things that don't.
So why did we go to 2025?
Because that's the dollar amount that gets matched up in when we did the comparison for the new building.
That's the escalation.
Oh, okay.
Correct.
Okay.
I don't want to derail this because I have like 100 questions about, or comments and questions about this, but can you just go into the types of projects, Phil? I mean, I know as SBC, it was in the presentation, full list is in the presentation on 11.9, but the types of projects that are recommended by Fryer and carried in the CIP.
Yeah, I mean, COVID was the first hit for us when we walked into this whole school and said, the state said, turn your ventilation full blast. And we walked down, there's no ventilation in that academic wing. There's nothing. It was built in 80 and there's no, it's heating. That's all you have. So you're looking at, that's a big project that's in CIP. It's estimated $750,000, I believe, just for whole school. That's not, at this point, they've talked about making it reimbursable. We'll see if that changes. That could be a reimbursable project. But there's many projects like that. Heating systems at Hall School that are 40 years old that you need to replace those unit ventilators. There's all sorts of heating, cooling, ventilation,
sidewalks,
parking lot, any of the ADA things. Center School, you can't get into the upper wing without going outside if you're in a wheelchair. The only way you can get upstairs is either be carried up the stairs. We're not doing that. Or you go out the door, up the sidewalk and come in the upper wing. There used to be a lift there. When the lift broke and you had to replace it, it no longer met the requirements. So instead of doing something else that was torn out, and we're now meeting the needs programmatically. So meaning there's a kindergarten through pre-K through fourth grade on a lower level, so every kid has access. But if they have indoor recess and they need to go upstairs, that's the only way they can get up there.
So these are repairs and health, safety, welfare type.
Absolutely, roofs, things like that.
They're not gut reno, structural renovations like the types of projects, the types of costs. I'm not asking this, I'm stating this. They're not the types of projects like the hall renovation option that SBC put forward.
Right, did you even? Yeah, a significant difference. Yeah, did you even have the replacement of the lift in that?
There's no, I don't know if it's in the prior one off the top of my head.
The challenge with it, you're familiar with Lula lifts. It's a lift that just goes partially up. The challenge there is when it was put in, that width was okay, and you'd have to demo out all the cement block in the walls. The problem is the hallway then isn't wide enough. If you make the lift bigger, now the hallway gets too narrow.
And that's what you get into. You're going to get into the same thing with accessible toilet renovations from an
The room isn't big enough. It's a hallway. The door isn't big enough.
The only other point, I'm sorry, Peter, I know you have a question, but the last statement is the Fryer report, which is what these are based on, did anticipate all of this work as a single project. That's what these values are based on. I say that now for the members of this committee because that has a significant impact to the cost of these projects potentially. The type of work, threading ventilation through a new school, roof, repointing the entire thing, replacing all the windows. Yes, it is effective doing it all as a single bulk project. If you break them, but doing that will likely take longer, I would guess, than a single summer slammer type of construction project. So there is either going to be significant and like a couple of months or more long interruption in student services where we need to look at modular costs or some sort of temporary displacement of students or alternative means in both buildings. Or you're phasing this work in smaller projects over a longer period of time. So you're going to have a window replacement project coupled with, I don't know, whatever, some masonry pointing on the exterior that can be done when school is out of session in the summer. Then you have to wait another year, so you're adding escalation as well as repeated overhead and markup and general conditions for the contractor to every project cost over doing it as a single project. It is significant. I can't tell you how significant, but it is significant. You can look at the escalation values here, just marking it up a couple of years. If we phase this work over 10 or 12 or whatever, however many years, picture escalation on some of these projects. $1 million project becomes 3. You know, like
Millions.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
But just to piggyback on that, you know, these figures are upgraded to fiscal year 25. We're now budgeting for fiscal year 24. So, you know, like in the CIP plan, you know, that goes out to 27. So,
yeah, it involves,
right?
This involves getting a jump on these if referendum were, you know, were not to pass.
So
we'd be lucky to get
short
2025 prices.
It's a short trip to 20 million. I mean, easy, but.
I'm hoping to clarify in my own mind. We saved this much money from the education budget by going to a new school, right? So we won't make these upgrades to schools if we go to a new school.
Correct.
Are we going to completely abandon Hall's center school?
Well, there are some unknowns. Can we come back to that?
Because what I'm saying is some of these projects will have to be done, but not education-wise. Education doesn't give a crap about Hall School once they moved out, or center school once they moved out. And I apparently, I'm assuming we're just going to abandon Hall School and leave it as is, so no upgrades, and we can save that $6 million there.
Well, so what I would say is these projects are being held off right now because of this consideration of a new school. So they could potentially not happen. Reuse, we'll make sure we talk about reuse before I'm done, because that's coming up. There
we go.
But
thank you.
Yes, essentially you leave these projects behind until we talk about reuse. But you leave these projects behind, and you also have to keep in mind, if these projects were done, this is what Fryer saw in 2017. We've had 5 going on 6 years of decay in these buildings. And so there may be more projects. Plus then that gets you up to level. Moving forward, you're still gonna have capital coming in. There are a lot more projects on Phil's list that are even beyond this list that he would be doing next. So this dollar gets us up to a point, and then there's the potential year after year to be adding more projects.
Yeah, I understand that. And from Phil's point of view, this is good to get rid of these projects. I understand that. If I could get rid of $20 million worth of projects, believe me, I would. But if Phil gets rid of those 20 million and then gives them to us to do, it doesn't solve our problems.
Of course.
So, and I understand that some of these projects will have to be done on town dollars anyways, and you're going to get to that.
Yep. Let's talk more about reuse, and don't let me leave here without talking about reuse, okay? In case I forget. All right. Okay.
Thanks.
So project costs, these are kind of the big numbers that we've been talking about all along. This graphic presentation you all have probably seen before. It's been out to the town for a long time now, and it's basically showing really what's sort of 4 potential results here. The new school without an auditorium, either with the waiver or without the waiver. Next line down is new school with the auditorium, either with the waiver or without the waiver. So you have 4 potential numbers, which are the 4 bonding scenarios we're going to detail coming up in this presentation. So obviously option 1, which is just the school without the auditorium, would assume the referendum passed the school but did not pass the auditorium. Let's just make that assumption. Then you would just carry that line over and see, okay, well, worst case scenario, we don't get the waiver, then we are going to have a 40.83% reimbursement rate on the eligible items, and the cost to the taxpayer will be $36,124,473. Right, so this is without the waiver and without the auditorium. Now, if we go with the assumption that the waiver gets approved, which we've all talked about that being delicate already, we would come to this. We would get back to our 53.21 reimbursement on the eligible. And then the cost of the taxpayers would go from 36 million down to 28.7, basically.
Quick comment.
Yeah.
There's a chart with all the reimbursement rates for all the towns in the state, in the regions. Our maximum reimbursement rate as of now, this year, is 53.21%. That's the most you can get per that chart. Every year, it goes down, and it's been going down. I think when
it was 55 in earlier meetings of the SBC, it was 55.
Yep. When we applied for the roof project, our reimbursement rate for a rental project was at 70%.
Yeah, now rentals are down to 63.
And why is that?
That's just the way the
dollars.
No, I just mean, why us?
That's pretty much everybody.
Oh, okay.
There's very few, I think, that have gone up, if any. And you spoke about Tom before. They just had a very specific need, and that's why they got a significantly higher reimbursement rate in the 90s.
Was that their rotten?
Was it?
Yeah, so that wasn't, there was specific legislation written for that project.
So carrying on with that, so we just want to cross the top line, new school without the auditorium, without the waiver, with the waiver. So those are two of the potential bonding amounts there. And then if we go down to the next line, 1A, we add the auditorium in, same two possibilities, with the waiver and without the waiver. So you can see in these scenarios, our highest possible cost to the taxpayers would be auditorium, no waiver, at 43,354,13. These four different numbers that could go to the taxpayers, like I said, will come up again in a minute in our tool. Any questions on this slide before I go? Debt borrowing limits. This is just sort of an FYI for the Board of Finance. Phil, do you want to, you did kind of the work on this, so why don't you?
Donna can speak to this.
We've actually shared that document, so we're somewhat say.
I think the question is, that's always, it's like, what's the Board of Finance's role in this and trying to determine what the town can spend and how much can you borrow? And so, this document basically says, that you have the ability for school-based, that you can, your debt limitation can not exceed that 59 million. And the highest project that Mike just said was 43 million. So there's still a window, and that's just for the school. It doesn't mean it's not high. Doesn't mean it's not a lot of money, but it's still within your window that, and this data comes from the financial advisor. Our auditor. Our auditor.
And a point of clarification, that first section that says debt limitation, it says for the school, it's 4.5 times base expense budget, or
Donna's got that one.
Tax revenue.
Tax revenue, 4.5 times tax revenue.
Yeah.
Okay.
13 million is the tax.
So then that number calculates out to 59, whatever. Right. Okay.
So Mike.
Yes.
Just as a comment, when I got my new credit card, my wife said it's a limit, not a goal.
Yes. Yes, of course.
We're not at 59 million.
Yes.
And just to point out there, because the discussion has come up, I don't know if you were going to get to it, Mike, the other general purposes debt limit at 29 million is something I think, Donna, correct me if I'm wrong, that would conceivably cover a bonding situation like firehouses or something, or the library or something like that. I mean, back in the day. So not that there's no new library. I want to stop that rumor here.
Okay, on to the next. So this is the timeline. You've all heard a lot about it already. This is the proposed timeline. As you can see, we're here tonight on February 16th. And this is what the Office of the First Selectman has put together with consultations from legal and all the various parties that would sort of weigh into how this process works if we were to meet the June application deadline for the project. If we can't apply in June, we cannot apply until next June. So it would move the whole thing out 1 year. So if you work backwards from the June application deadline, the time to make the application, gather the documents that go in the application, working your way backwards to a referendum that would allow you to pull those documents together and do the application, and then working back to the town meeting and working back to tonight, basically. That's how this timeline was created, and actually it had some previous dates in it, which we've already passed, like going to planning and zoning for the 824 review and things like that.
Mike, in
Yes.
regards to this calendar, I don't know where I stand on this, but there's been calls for a town hearing.
Mm-hmm. There have been people talking about it, yes.
Yes. Is that town meeting also a town hearing, or is it only
the town meeting would not be officially called a town hearing, because those have certain parameters about how you notify them, but it is exactly the same function.
We couldn't, the town meeting notify them at the same time or for the same place? Or
so I will say that the town meeting is a public hearing. You will be discussing the two items, which would be the two questions that would go to referendum. That happens at that town meeting. There is discussion that happens there. There's no vote. Just for clarity's sake, this is the process of a selectman initiated referendum. Our town process, which is fully statutory, only requires a town meeting. We could go through our normal processes and this $60 million project could be decided at town meeting. I don't think anyone thinks that's the best way to handle this. That's why we're moving towards a selectman initiated referendum so that all electors in the town get to cast a vote as opposed to a small window of time on one evening.
I understand that we could do it at town meeting, but for our budget, our total budget, which is what, about 18 or $20 million, we have a hearing, then we go to town meeting and we send it to referendum. So to send something that's 30 times that or whatever the number is, three times what we spend a year total budget, maybe we ought to have a referendum.
So you bring up a good point. A lot of the people have made that same comment. Also keep in mind, there's a difference in how that budget that goes to hearing and then meeting and then referendum is presented. That budget doesn't spend 2 years of public meetings, and it doesn't get the 8 public outreach sessions. So this process does look different, but it's not under the cover of darkness. And so the these meetings, all of these meetings, plus all the public outreach events, do the same process as a hearing, even though they're not called a hearing and they're not warned the way a hearing is. Plus the added outreach where a mailer went to every house 2 times. When we do that budget hearing, we don't send a mailer to every house. So we've actually, in some ways, done greater amount of public outreach than even the town hearing would do. But again, the town hearing process of coming in and asking questions and studying the topic will happen at the town meeting.
That was the question I had. That last sentence was all I needed. The other question is, if the town meeting decides not to send it to referendum, can that happen, or will the Board of Selectmen send it to referendum?
It adjourns to referendum.
It adjourns to referendum.
The similar adjournment to referendum that our annual town meeting has, where it adjourns to referendum.
So that's the decision-making strategy from the get-go. There's no surprises to that. You go to referendum at the adjournment of that.
Right.
And there's no reason that anyone can pose the same questions they would pose in a hearing, or like the same comments they made on January 26th in all school. That's
like all town meetings will be a moderator, and it will run in the same manner as all of our town meetings. And there will be 3 items. The first 2 will be the discussion of the questions that will be on the referendum, because the SBC has asked the selectmen to consider the second question. And then the third question or the third item is adjourning to referendum.
I would suggest that we not be our usual tidy cost-saving selves and then hire a pro for the moderator. Maybe someone from out of town.
So you know, there's a lot that goes into a referendum, and the town clerk's office and the registrar of voters office is in line with that process. And there have already been discussions on, I believe there is a plan for the moderator of the referendum to be the which is typical of our budget referendum, to be the moderator of that town meeting. That is typical. Otherwise, there's a process in which the moderator of that meeting actually has to resign so that they can have a new moderator for the referendum. So their plan is to follow the same model that they would for the annual town meeting and the budget referendum, where the moderator for the referendum.
I was wondering how they got screwed on that every year.
So
there you go.
That typical moderator of the referendum is typically the person that's nominated at annual town meeting. And that is, I think, what would happen again. Otherwise, there's a procedure in place to, someone has to actually resign, because the meeting doesn't end. The meeting adjourns to the referendum, so they are connected.
So there's a plan.
So yes, there will be, I have full confidence that the moderator of that meeting will be well-versed.
And I'm not insulting any previous moderators. I just think it's a big,
I'm gonna
it's a big lift.
lie.
Yeah, I know how you.
Chances are it won't be anybody in this room. Just say that.
Joe, you had a question?
Yeah,
I did. Based on participation from the public, is it possible that this town meeting is carried over? And would the date of the 28th give us enough time to carry over the meeting? You know, meaning if there are 1,000 people show up to speak, obviously we wouldn't be able to handle that volume on March 14th.
So that's a good question. And they don't have a clear answer, but what I will tell you is that there is a time.
I'm going to give you a foggy answer.
No, there is a time frame from which the difference between the town meeting and the referendum. It has to be no less than 7, no more than 14 days from the town meeting. We have the time frame out so that it could be 14 days, and that allows because you have to have absentee, right? You have to have absentee balloting, and that allows greater opportunity for folks to obtain absentee ballots if they need. It is a requirement to have absentee balloting. So that full 2 weeks is what it was our norm. It's our past practice, so we're sticking with that. Now, if we needed to hold that meeting over, I don't know, and I will look to get that answer for you. But
we also have to notify the public with
right,
a certain amount of time as well. That's my own concern.
Yeah, and I'm not sure that can happen because they are legally warned meetings that will be warned together, and so that will already have been legally warned. So I don't know that, but before our joint meeting, I will look to have a clear answer for you.
All right, anything else? Yeah, let's, what we are offering to you, quite respectfully, is in our 2 years of working on it, this is what we believe is your role amongst the other things that you need to do here. The statute requires the Board of Finance appropriation of funds to allow the superintendent to apply for the grant. The grant requires Board of Finance appropriation of total project cost before the reimbursement. And we've seen that many times before when we ask the town to approve projects, even if they are sometimes fully grant funded, we still ask the townspeople to approve the full cost with then the reimbursement. So it's a commitment at the full cost.
So if we, I've seen that this is what happened with the roofs, is we approve the full cost with the idea that we were going to be reimbursed, and then the reimbursement didn't come, so the project was canceled. If we did this here and the state said we're not reimbursing at the level we said we were, is this project canceled, or what do we do at that point?
Yeah, I think the whole group is, the way we've presented the numbers, we expect a percentage of reimbursement, and I think if we did not get any reimbursement,
No,
I think there's a project.
I think that, all right, but even at 60% of the reimbursement we're expecting for whatever reason, are we still bounded for the full project?
Well, I think we would know the answer on reimbursement before we contracted with somebody.
All right.
Right?
Well,
I think the way the timeline lays out, we would know the
But
answer
we
on
would still have
reimbursement.
a town referendum saying build one for this cost.
Right.
And
But if it suddenly
decided-
becomes $60 million to the taxpayers, we need to have a chat with the taxpayers.
That's what we.
That was my question.
Yeah, the language will say up to X dollars, so up to that $60 million number. But I said, and I think I just said this to Phil today, I can't imagine us moving forward with the project with the full cost to Wellington taxpayers at $60 million without having another conversation or 40 more conversations. I think that just doesn't happen, and I don't think there's a practice of that in this town. Of that, I think there would have to be a broader conversation. No one is expecting to net $60 million.
Would we be asked to either approve the 60 million or 66 million at that time?
You'll see it in the question.
Yeah.
It will, the amount will be decided by the referendum. If the referendum approves both, then you have a total cost for both, the building and the auditorium. So it's what the taxpayers decide on.
So can I ask about the waiver, put the waiver into that discussion we just had, not getting the waiver. Is the view on that, like different,
Well, that's what Erica just said. I mean, if we.
No, but the waiver's not the whole 60 million.
Oh, right.
You get the state share.
I'm sorry.
You don't get the waiver.
I mixed up waiver and reimbursement for a moment.
Is that a revisiting moment, or is that
I think that's the moment where we use the full weight of the selectman's office, the resources that we have, our state representative, our state senator, our conversations with any legislators we can to adjust that. And I wouldn't stop arguing. So I don't know that I'd say, let's just go to construction and let's just take their 48% and not fight for what we believe is the rest. So if we weren't to get it, I think you would then start seeing a lot of conversations coming from my office, Phil's office, and Mike as the SBC chair to say, enough is enough. Why? Show us a real reason why. Now go fight for us in Hartford.
Well, one thing I was wondering if Phil or if Scott has ever mentioned what a small town or a town like us with the square footage concern that didn't get applied for the waiver, didn't get it, what they were told in that rejection.
Scott told us a story that he had a district fail a referendum 3 times for the same reason. They were fighting. They wanted to know the waiver amount. They wanted to know if the state was going to approve it. They did not get that information. They failed it and they passed it. I think it was the third time. And they got their waiver. So, this is the whole, cart before the horse comment. It's frustrating. And I think that's why when we did Tool, we're trying to tell people there's a window. There's a window of 28 million to 43 million. And there's with waiver, without waiver, with auditorium, without auditorium. And so we're trying to share that picture because they all can be impactful in your tax impact. In the grand scheme of things though, the projects are either $60 million or $66 million. Those don't change. What changes is the amount that we get reimbursed from the state.
But I don't think we just take a no waiver and say thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
No, I fully understand that. Political reality, however, is that this is a one-party state and both our state representative and our state senator are in the out part.
Well, I would hope that they would be fighting for their constituents.
Oh, I'm sure they will.
I will tell you that I had the opportunity to meet here in this office with the lieutenant governor, who just happened to be in the area and asked if she could stop by. And we had lengthy conversations about this topic, about the what I thought were uneven percentages to some towns, specifically rural towns, specifically Wellington. So I think there's conversations out there, and so I think there'll be lots of conversations if we didn't get it, and wouldn't just take no. And I have no doubt that our state reps would be working for us in Hartford.
We need.
Oh, I have no doubt either.
Yep.
I worked hard to get them both elected. I would hope.
I would hope so. I mean, that's their job, their political party aside. But
it's not, that's not my concern, their political party. Is that they're on the out party right now, and east of the river has been getting short shrift for a very, very long time because we don't have a lot of voters out here for the big offices.
Well,
Just like we don't
so-
have a lot of
so-
students for our school.
Right, so I don't think there's any more we can say on this topic.
Yeah.
All right.
I think,
That's one thing I wanted to ask, not about this, but an offshoot. The history of Willington going for a big school project, and that requires a lot of debt and everything else. How long ago would you, what project would that be, and how long ago was it?
well, it was probably the 2 renovations that were completed in 1980.
Okay.
Yeah, so long ago, it has probably no connection to any, like, you probably can't draw any conclusions from that process from the 1970s.
Very few people remember.
I remember it happening because I was going to school while it was happening.
But here's my question, Phil. If you're a district that hasn't gone to the well for 45 years, you know, do you get credit for that? Do you get like anything for that? Really?
We'll argue. We'll argue.
I think we haven't been whiny.
Well, I think it's 20 years. I mean, that's what I have to, I have to check a box on the grant that says, will you be in this building for 20 years? And you have to sign off on that. That's their expectation, I think, because that's the amount of time it takes them to pay the full bond. And then once it's washed, you could go back if you wanted to, or you have to have really good reason to go before that, right? Some sort of emergency. Could be project-based, not necessarily new school-based. I think, though, the message that I want to be cautious of when we start talking about legislators and senators is we need to give OSCGR the opportunity to look at our paperwork if there's a positive referendum and approve a grant and approve a waiver. If they do not, then we take next steps, just as anyone else would. It is premature, and I would say dangerous, for anyone to try and do that work beforehand, because there is a very close connection and a lot of work to be done with OSCGR, and they wield a lot of power. And we have seen that in a roof project.
Okay.
All right.
That is duly noted. Everyone got that, right? Okay.
I heard it.
Yeah, they do. They're operating statutorily.
Yeah.
However, they are. However, just very cautious that we don't sick a dog where we need to sick a dog. You know, don't need to sick a dog.
Okay, thank you.
I have a curious question about the whole process between now and the application. My understanding so far as a member of this school building committee is that once we get past referendum, then the costs we incur be rolled into the project and reimbursable to some extent.
Yes, that we are eligible to put costs towards reimbursement. Yes.
So what costs are we going to incur between the referendum and the application? And what happens if the waiver is not granted or the grant is not granted?
So I think a couple of things would be the owner's project manager. We start with a new owner's project manager contract and
some design,
with some initial design work. Those are the 2 big ones. And obviously some continued legal, but those are small pieces compared to those 2.
But those expenditures then fall totally back on the taxpayers?
Eventually, yes.
Yep. The percent expended, like you'll have a contract amount for whatever the cost would be as if it were a complete and ongoing project. But again, like any professional, both the OPM and the NA, you're only they're gonna bill you for what has been expended of that contract until you give them notice to stop. Right now, so
we will also have many meetings with OSCGR along the way, including when you download or input your and you click submit, you're gonna already have conversations with them. To let them know we had a positive referendum. This is the project we're planning. It's the reason we've already sat with them. We would sit with them after the grant application went in. I think we'd have a good sense from them is there support in this, and where are we on the list?
All right, let's talk about the project impact on taxes. So this spreadsheet, which I understand is a little hard for you to read where you are, but
You got printed.
you have printed copies. I'm gonna walk you through in a little bit here. Each of these colored sections, if you take the whole section with a particular color, that represents one of the 4 potential amounts.
Mike, do you want me to click on the tool?
Hang on just a second, let me.
Give us the basic first.
Yeah, so over here, we put, it's not really in the center, but I think of it as front and center. The first thing you're gonna see when you start reading left to right is the most expensive option. We're not hiding it down the far end or anything like that. We put the most expensive one first, and that is the $43
colors on
million.
the screen are not the same as the colors on the printout, I take it.
There's a large printout.
For additional confusion. Yeah.
Sure.
So thank you for your input.
So look at the screen for the moment. So
Talk about delaying the meeting, Peter.
Just go green, blue, you know.
So look at the screen for the moment. The block of 6 columns all the way to the left is the 43 million. All right, and then there's the 36 million, the 34 million, and the 28 million. And those, as we've talked about before, are the 4 potential options, worst case down to best case scenario. So if you stay in any one of those particular sections, that is going to show you the impact. If you put your assessment in the yellow box up here in the top, it will calculate all the numbers in all 4 sections. So in this example that's frozen here on this screen, there's $100,000 just to be the placeholder for what's on the screen. Once you type the number in and you hit enter, all these calculations happen, and this screen will go out the whole 20 years. It will show you in the 1, 2, 3, in the 4th column in any one of these sections, it will show you what your increment is for that year in the mill rate. And then the next column will show you what the dollars for that year are that you increase. And then the last column will accumulate those. A lot of people have used different words trying to figure out how to wrap their brain around what is the total impact. So the important thing is the rightmost column in any of these 4 sections is what you're adding from beginning. So if you look at your taxes right now today, before we bond a school project, and then assume a project has been approved, you can pick any one of these 4, and you can say, like for this example, $100,000 in the worst case scenario, we add $28 the first year. So you have a total of $28 in the first year. The second year, you add, I gotta get where I can see it, is it 81? $81. So now you have a combined total in the rightmost column of the $18 plus the $81. And then it carries on year after year. So the rightmost column accumulates the amount that your taxes have gone up. So if you took your tax bill from today and your tax bill in that year and subtracted, that's the difference.
Just for the record, we have different numbers on this sheet.
The colorful
go,
sheet has got, yeah, so it's got
a different.
161.
Oh, okay. So it has to have, when it was screenshot, it had a different value in it.
Yeah.
So it's okay. I mean, and I think this is an
on
old
the
picture.
slide, it's okay.
This is an old picture. So look, I'll show you the live tool.
So just hang on before you go there. I just want to make one more comment before you go to the live tool.
Yeah.
If you look at this $100,000 as the placeholder here, if you look at the highest year in the rightmost column, so this is your worst case scenario, what is the most that it's going to cost you if you have 100,000 assessed property?
$1,018.
It is $1,018 over what your taxes are now without the school. Okay, that is the top year, and there's an interesting correlation there. I think if it's a little bit of mathematical magic, but a mathematician I talked to said, no, that's just math. If you look at the $100,000 and you look at that number, that's about $1,000, right? So worst case scenario, in the highest year, if your property is assessed at 200,000, that number is gonna be about $2,000.
Because that's how mill rates work.
That's right.
Because that's how it works, because it's just math. But the magic happens to be, that for every 100,000, it's about $1,000 on the worst year, on the worst project, on the most expensive project.
Mhm. And
If
that
you
is,
come down, it's much less, of course, in the lower project, but, so that's easy for the public to say, all right, my property is assessed at $150,000. So I'm gonna be about $1,500 on the worst year.
okay.
There were a lot of numbers out there about it being a 60% increase or, probably I got an email saying that my taxes are gonna grow twofold. That information is absolutely not correct. The impact on your taxes for this project, and we're gonna talk about that in a second, for this project, at the most expensive one will be $1,000 on every 100,000.
And I just want to point out, because you're using a tool that has 100,000, so it's easy for you to multiply it closer to what your actual assessed value is. But it's not a $200,000 house. That's the appraised value. That's a different number.
Right, it's the assessed value, which we
yeah.
will explain all of that
Right.
too. And that is the online tool, which a lot of people have used already today.
Yeah, there's
The
a little
online
tutorial
tool
and
is,
everything.
right, takes you there because you can punch your exact number in.
But here's the caution I would give. Other users are, like coming in fast, the more popular it gets. So you don't get to like dwell in there or go get your coffee warmed up, you got to act fast. You want to print it out. Don't mess around,
Yeah.
I see if anybody's in there when we click it.
Yeah, do you want to add something else?
Yes, I do. Mike was talking about the $1,000 bump at about year 4.
Yeah, this first year of the bond.
Yep.
And then the increase goes down.
Yeah.
But it's still cumulative.
Right.
So by the time you get to the end of this bond, your taxes are not declining, they're still increasing, albeit by a smaller amount each year.
Just
That's,
I thought it's more than what you're paying. And the cumulative is a dangerous word again, because it's not, it's decreasing, but you're not adding 1,000 to the next year. You're not coupling that. It's $1,000 over what you're paying now. Correct. So your tax bill goes from $3,000 to $4,000. The next year, your tax bill would be a little less than $4,000. So it's not, you're not adding another 1,000.
Right. So
I'm not saying you're adding another 1,000,
but that's what I'm saying. That's the confusion. People are now going to say, I don't want people to see this and say, again, this is cumulative because of the way it was presented previously.
Right. The box actually is the cumulative, as opposed to people thinking they have to accumulate the whole column. You don't. The last column is the cumulative in any particular year. So your cumulative starts dropping back off. It reduces and reduces and reduces after the peak year. Just like the library bond we have right now was, I don't remember the first year of that bond, but it was many hundreds of thousands of dollars in that year. And now that bond is down to like 174,000 now. And that library bond will pay off in 2027 and it'll be closer to 150 in that year.
And
I'm doing rough numbers here.
3 million, and it affected us for 20 years.
Right,
And
right.
this
And you will see the whole 20 years. So Phil, do you want to open the tool now? So this is the same tool that's online. This is a live representation of what you just saw on the screen. Or the screen was a representation of this.
So exciting.
So someone is in there right now with $65,000. And so their number is probably going to be $650 in the worst year, right? Because of our example, right? So yeah, it's 672. No, so it's
more than that.
So the only box they can edit is that yellow box. So if it goes, if I say it's 129,000, and you click enter, changes all the numbers in those yellow columns, and they can see what their tax impact is.
right. So for me, what I did is I looked up my current tax bill to see what that was. And then I took the worst case scenario. I put my assessment in, did the calculator. I looked at the worst year, and the worst year for me, I compared that to my current tax bill, and that difference was 1/3. So it's not a 60%
That's
thing.
what I got.
So my tax bill
Go up 1/3.
was at 1/3, yes. My tax bill went up 1/3 on the high year and then started dropping back off. Now, there are also, What's that?
It's still staying up, doesn't go back down to what it was.
That's right.
Well, no, it starts going back down. It would
So don't,
return.
you know, you're still paying more over
You're
time.
still gonna
But then
pay
you
more
start
whether
paying
you
less
have
and less
school
and
or
less.
not.
You start paying less and less and less.
Yeah, so at the end of the 20 years, the mill rate, it goes back down.
The highest mill rate is about a 10 mil increase.
About half the difference. At the end of 20 years, your mill rate is about half the difference at the worst year. Sorry, just
right on the last year. And then once it's paid off, your mill rate would essentially be back where it is now. Except, hang on, I'm getting there. For this project, the mill rate would be back. Yes. However, we know there are all sorts of other things that we wrestle with on this board every year, right? That affect our budget: revenue, expense growth, what we use from the general fund, what kind of things we got from the state this year, either as revenue or another smack from the state about something. Pete, don't you have a favorite one? What was that?
Oh, it says the
no, it's got
initials.
3 letters, like M something.
MBR.
Yeah.
Which is also the education budget. MBR kills us all the time.
So,
and I understand, Phil, as far as budgeting concerns, our MBR can drop significantly if we buy a new school. The resets. Now, resets doesn't sound as good as drop significantly.
I don't know.
Reset sounds like it might even go off.
But it resets.
Hey,
That's
why do
an
we have
example of ways to
grandchildren that
determine
wanna live in town?
all right, so let's get back to this tax calculator.
I have
for a minute.
granddogs. None of them go to school.
Yeah, I went.
Grandchildren.
Yeah.
I don't have
The red
grandchildren.
box.
Not yet.
So-
I'm not going to.
That's what.
Okay, so to finish the conversation about the tax calculator, there's really important stuff, and it goes to a lot of the public feedback and chitter chatter that's going on, which I think is really important for you guys to consider. We decided to take out, and some people are saying that we're trying to use some sort of shady techniques of trying to hide things, and all those people are completely wrong. Here we are on public record right now saying, as we've said the last few nights, we're not trying to hide anything. We are again going to serve it on a silver platter. This has no other budget assumptions in it. This is like you went to the car dealer and said, I want to buy a new car. What are the payments going to be? The car dealer doesn't say to you, well, your electric bill is also this, and you're going to buy a new stove next year. This is what the car is going to cost you. That's what the dealer tells you, right? You go to the mortgage company, I want to buy this house. This is what the house is going to cost you. These are your payments. So in this spreadsheet, we have put none of the buying the new stove. We have not put what you pay for groceries or any of that stuff in here. We have assumed no budget growth, and we have assumed no revenue changes
And no
no
pandemic.
grand list, and we've assumed no pandemic, correct? Right? And also important, we did not slip in the $500,000 in savings into this either. We put no alterations into this, except I think the 99% collection rate, right? Because we feel that's a safe number. We've been using that for decades.
And that's still based on the 21 grand list, correct?
Yes.
Yes, and we know there are changes that are coming, right? Like we're waiting for Loves to get added to the grand list.
We are. And I just want to say for the record, because everybody's asking about that, they obtained an extension on preparing, the assessor did, on preparing the grand list
Right.
Until February 28th. So that's why those
Okay.
stats are not in anyone's numbers
Right,
as yet.
right.
But it should all be favorable when they are.
Yes. So again, this tool right here is only telling you what you're paying for your new car. All right.
Yeah.
This is without any assumptions. We know that we could safely talk about the $500,000 savings, but we didn't put it in here. We know that we can probably predict an average growth on the expense budget, which is what we had in our information before. And that's when things got up into the 50, 60 mils for people, all the other conversations started, because that was showing growth in expense budget on top of adding the school. And it was not showing changes in revenue or grand list or anything else. So it was an attempt to be more open, and it was an attempt to show the overall what we think taxpayers will be paying at the end of this. The problem was we couldn't factor in revenue and grand list and all that. So we basically gave a guessing number that was missing a bunch of pieces. So that's created confusion, which is why we went back to just presenting the cost of the project. We are 100% aware for everyone listening in the public, we know, and we are saying in front of this board, that there are other things that will affect people's tax bills. That's not in this formula here.
Isn't it safe to say if your taxes go up and you have a new school, your house is worth more?
No.
Why not?
It doesn't.
Direct correlation.
There's no correlation.
Oh, you may not.
Well, there is the potential that people see your town with their varying values, and then your market goes up, and then the next readout picks it up, but that's just guessing.
Then your taxes go up because you're.
But even at that, if the grand list grows, and it's usually because your property values have increased, which in turn pushes the mill rate down, which means you pay the same.
Right.
Well, they would balance, right?
But nobody said life gets cheaper.
Right.
Nobody.
So.
That's so big because I have a fixed income, so it goes.
So what is on the town website right now are the links to get to this. There's an explainer video that runs about 7 minutes, which explains how to do this, how to go to the town. It gives you a link to get to the town database. You can look at your assessed value and very easy plug your number in. And so people in the public are using it, and they're doing the calculations right now to figure out what this project actually will add to their tax bill.
Could you go back to something? I just want to say, go back to that slide we were on. Thank you. I just want to make it simple. That you keep talking about the highest year. It's in every instance. It's year 4 with the first year of the bond, right?
Well, yeah, I think it's year 3,
so,
or is it year 4?
It's 4. It's because there's 3 years of note.
4. Yep.
3 years of note. First year of the bond, that's when the big hit comes in the financing choice that this is using. Yep. So if people want to see the worst, they go there first.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, so they just have to look down a few lines and they're going to see that worst year, and then it reduces, it backs off year after year after year.
Your eyes are going to be drawn there.
Yeah, no, I know most people can figure it out. I just am saying if you're impatient, you know.
Yeah, but they'll look at, I mean, it's the biggest number.
And if we're optimistic, which I'll probably get skewered for this too, but if we're optimistic, and let's just say the taxpayers decide they don't want the auditorium, they want the school, and we do get the waiver, that is the least amount we would bond in these 4 scenarios. And that's the one down here, in which case, what was $1,000 on a $100,000 house now becomes $678 on a $100,000 house. So it's about $300 and some dollar less in the worst year.
Okay.
So conversely, if people are thinking about, well, what do I want? Do I want to step up for the money for the school, or do I want to step up for the money for the school and the auditorium? They can also do that thought process here. They can say, well, I really want the school. I'm not sure about the auditorium. Oh, here's the difference. This is what it's going to mean to me.
You should have a column there that says after 5 years, everybody wants an auditorium and they have to build an outbuilding auditorium. It's going to cost them.
The numbers really change.
Right.
Can you just mention the average assessment, because that was a
right.
Yeah.
So the average assessment, as has been talked about a lot, if you take the entire Willington thing, the average assessment came, what was the original number, 150 something or 160? Hang on, I'm getting there.
Okay.
It was in the 150s.
It was in the 150s, but there was a small group of very high taxed properties that skewed that average up. FedEx, things like that, that threw the curve way off. So we took those few pieces out and then looked at the bulk of the Willington properties, and that came in at 135.
Yeah, 135
is the average assessment. Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
135. Yeah.
I'm really shocked.
Wow.
When you take out anything $600,000 assessed value or over, right, it comes down to 135. There are very few properties that are $600,000 or over.
Right. Well, as you saw when this calculator pulled up, what was the last number of input?
65,000.
And I've looked at, in the course of my work doing foundation investigations, I always look at the assessor card. I see a lot of Willington residences that are well below 100,000.
So
really?
Yes, yeah, it was surprising. So again, the average house.
Assessed, not appraised.
Right. So again, so if you plug that number in the yellow box, $135,000 in the yellow box, that's going to be about a $1,350 hit on the worst year, in the worst funding scenario here, and is probably 950 or something in the best scenario.
The other thing to keep in mind here is just because there may be a $68,000 assessed value, that is absolutely no indication of what the market value for the property.
Right, no, I
Right.
understand that.
That's what the taxing is on.
That's
So,
what I understand.
all right, what do we have left in here, Phil?
Just this.
Okay.
Well, just for context, I mean, you know, a $200,000 house, the appraised value, it's 140,000 assessed value. That's not that far off that median, right?
Correct.
So,
and again, appraised
is
isn't
that
even
low?
necessarily, appraised isn't necessarily even market value because of the volatility in the market too. We have, you know, there's ebbs and flows there. If someone bought a house in Willington last year, they might have paid in a real peak of the market. You know, so it throws off, it skews some of those numbers. So that's why the critical thing is to go to your assessment, see what your assessment is, plug that number in, because that's what you're taxed on.
I just wanted to put it in context because 135 is not that low for.
So the last thing here are the suggested Board of Finance resolutions, which have the correct language in it to meet all the legal obligations. You will see that there's a delta between 60 million and 62 million in these numbers. And that is the extra costs, right, of the, yeah, you say it with the right words, please. The difference between the $60 million project and the $62 million.
740,000.
So that is the interest on the notes.
Could you speak up a little bit for the Zoom crowd?
Yes.
I will also repeat it.
Thank you, Mike. So yes, there will be interest to pay on the notes when the note matures. And you can either roll that amount into the next note that you borrow, or you can pay for it. Now, I think that there is going to be some interest income coming in to offset the interest that you have to pay.
However, we have to put the maximum amount into the question so that the taxpayers approve the maximum amount, so that if we have to include that interest in the upfront, we have that ability to include that interest in the upfront.
Like if we choose to.
Right.
If we choose to bond, to capitalize on the interest in the bond, we have to have the appropriation for it. And that's why it's a not to exceed number. Doesn't mean we have to go that way, but without it, we don't have the ability to make that decision.
And if we mess that up, or we, you know, try to be cheap with that number, we would blow up the deadline of applying for anything in June, right?
Well, we would be in a position where we have to get that money elsewhere.
Yeah. If
the interest revenue didn't do what Donna is hoping the interest revenue does, or interest income, I'm sorry.
Or put it within our budget, like it's been discussed. So we've already been discussing it coming out of CIP in that manner. But that's one option. The other option is to roll it into the bond.
It could still come out of CIP.
Right.
But this allows the option for it to roll either way, depending on what makes the most financial sense at the time when we have to do it.
And this language is what's required for the grant to capitalize on a state reimbursement for school construction project. This is the language for the appropriation.
That's our last slide, right? Yes. Yeah. So what I will say is that concludes the official presentation, but I'm here for questions. And also I do want to point out, I think a lot of you know that Ralph did a lot of research and put together some complex scenarios and made some tools. If you would like to ask him any questions on that, please feel free. I just want you to understand this is the end of the official presentation.
I'd like to stick with this while it's fresh, if that's all right. Oh.
I've got a question, but
Uh,
if you want,
and I'll
Madam
comment-
Chairman,
I was just going to say, if the board has questions for, I'd like to focus on this for right now. P?
yeah, you were talking about reuse. Did the
Let's talk
cost of
about reuse.
Yeah, you said you were gonna bring that up as part of your presentation, that's all.
And I told you to remind me if I didn't say it, right? I got to the last slide. Okay, so reuse, big topic in public. There is a charge, there is an item in the charge letter that says, I don't remember the exact language, investigate, identify potential reuses. Not do the project, not actually do it or whatever, identify potential reuses. Absolutely the intent of the committee to do that. There are parallel efforts in that area. The Board of Selectmen through CIP has requested money for studying town buildings. So there's a lot of different stuff sort of swirling around that, what could happen with the buildings. And as you identified before, it's very possible that new reuses could lead to more costs, depending what they are. There have been all sorts of things floated. Some ideas are wild and completely undoable, but some, are probably more in the realm of possibilities, and the SBC will continue working their charge and will work on identifying those potentials. If this passes and a new school is built, it will take some time, obviously, to get through the building and moving people into the new school. Then that would free up these two buildings to figure out what to do with them. A lot of work would be done before that time, because we have that time in between to be working on that solution. There have been a lot of ideas thrown around of possibilities of moving like these town office building operations into one of those buildings.
Right, what the use isn't so much of a concern to me. It's just that if I remember correctly, the roof on Center School needs to be replaced.
Right.
Regardless of the use, the roof on Center School.
So that's what I was just.
So there's gonna be a cost.
Yep.
That's in addition to this by the reuse.
Yes, and that's what I was coming to.
Okay.
So if the idea of moving the town offices to Center School was the thing that got selected.
Yep.
Through whatever processes that happens, then the taxpayers would no doubt end up with some costs to make that happen, which might be the roof, it might be moving costs, it might be renovations, there's definitely possibilities. If one of the other things that was floated as a very brief general idea was to see if there was interest in breaking up that property and selling it for lots, returning it to the tax rolls, then there still might be a demolition cost for the school. But that cost might be covered by the sale of the lots. I don't know. Has not been investigated yet.
That's fine. I just had one more question as in the financing of that. So right now, if we got to put a roof on a new school, there's reimbursement from the state for school repairs. If we put a new roof on that building for a new town office building, there is no reimbursement. Right? Am I correct?
You're correct.
But
you don't have to have a regulatory issue with the roof. So the roof that goes, not that I don't love all the town workers, but the children are regulated higher. So the costs are much higher.
The roof might be cheaper.
The roof will be cheaper if it's the town office people.
60% cheaper. That's the thing.
You could do an overlay.
You're right.
So I can move on from this. I just wanted to question that.
But I think it's important to note that why that roof project was canceled was because the state saw this building project moving forward and the potential for the school no longer to be in that building for 20 years and said, stop, we're no longer going to give you our money for a project you are probably not going to be in for 20 years.
Right. So that's why roofs on town office buildings cost more than roofs on schools for the town.
So I want to address one other thing about reuse that I think is really important, and that is there's a lot of talk, we've heard it in Present to Speak, there's all sorts of assumptions and stories being made up about the Hall Foundation going bankrupt and all this other stuff. It's completely speculative. The school building committee has already said repeatedly publicly that we have had conversations with the Hall Foundation. The Hall Foundation knows what our process is. The Hall Foundation knows where we might be going with this. And we will continue to have conversations with the Hall Foundation. No one is hanging anybody out to dry. The suggestion of that is preposterous. if that's the nicest word I can.
All right,
we are in kind. We will continue conversations with the Hall Foundation. There are all kinds of potential reuses for Hall School. That could perhaps be the new town hall, town office building, and recreation would love to have the back of that building. And then you're right, there might be expenses for the taxpayers in that case. Or there could be a development opportunity. One of the very general conversations with the Hall Foundation was, what if there was like a developer interested in creating senior housing? And maybe there's a development deal that could be worked out, get all the parties on the same page, and maybe it doesn't cost the taxpayers much money.
Okay, all right, that's as far as that conversation's gone so far. And then my second question.
Go ahead.
My second question is.
Only two.
Yeah, well,
let him get to his question
right now. Michelle.
It felt like more.
Michelle at present to speak was very coherent in the fact that education is important to a lot of people in this town. Very, very important. And I sometimes get the impression that there's some people in this town that feel that government's only job is education and everything else is, you know, secondary at best. But the people on this board are very, very, very interested in education. I know some of you have other interests, but was there any conversation as to the opportunity costs for two other projects if this goes through? There might be other things the town wants to do, and this is pushing us awfully close to our limit as far as bonding.
Well, keep in mind, if the schools are, if you're bonding a project to do something with a school that's not for education, it doesn't fit in that $59 million.
That's just,
it goes into a different bucket. It was a different section.
Oh, so we could get another 59 million?
No, 29.
No,
29 million for general purpose. The time you're going to spend it, but you have bonding capability.
Yes.
On the debt limit sheet, it says that.
And Donna, your flashlight's on, which is okay, but I can't see you there. Can't see anything. But I was just wondering if that had come up in conversation, whether the cost of the school would retard our abilities to do other projects.
We on the SBC have not spent much time on that because we've been working to try to meet this timeline and get as much information available for this part.
Okay.
Some of that conversation will certainly be incumbent in us fulfilling the rest of our charge. There are many items on our charge that we haven't fulfilled yet, but assuming if this gets approved, then the SBC is going to be working for another couple of years, getting through construction and all that. So there's time that the SBC plans to be continuing to march through their charge. If the thing fails in referendum and the decision is made by everybody not to pursue it anymore, that may change things. But that also means we'll still be in those schools, in which case the charge item to figure out reuse is sort of irrelevant.
Right, the reuse question is irrelevant.
Right.
How to get them, how to educate our children is not irrelevant.
Right, but the opportunity costs and all that other stuff go away if we don't move forward.
No. The opportunity cost will still be there. Because
okay, then maybe I misunderstood your opportunity cost. I thought you were talking about with reuse.
No. Even if we keep the schools we have now and fix them, it's going to cost a lot of money.
Yes,
and that's money we can't spend on other projects.
Correct. Yes, you are.
And that's what I mean by opportunity.
I misunderstood your question.
The amount of money that we have for other projects.
You sons of professors, you have these fancy words.
I wasn't
yes, you are correct about that. You're talking about what was detailed up there and then what is coming next with those buildings. Yes.
Question, John?
I do have a question. If the new school is successful in attracting new families to the town of Wellington, what is the student capacity of this new building?
Great question. We've talked about that. So the short answer to that is because the state hems us into this formula, the bigger we build it, the more flexible we build it, the more we get penalized. So the more our reimbursement rate would go down. So we're required to use an enrollment projection that we hired the correct person to do. which gives us a maximum of 419. And that 419 creates our mathematical calculation of 57,600 whatever square feet. And that is a 8-year projection. What is your highest in 8 years? Now, obviously, we're not building a building to last 8 years, right? We're hoping this building lasts 50 or 100 years or whatever, right? So we have to somehow be prudent to figure out how we can design a school that has some flexibility in it so that we can accommodate, if there is growth in town, that the formula prevented us from building square footage to accommodate. We have to figure out how to do that. So we try to design as flexibly as possible. Scott Pellman, our consultant, has said repeatedly, when we get to the actual design, we particularly want to be working with people who've designed schools before, because they're going to help us pick the best way to lay out spaces with flexibility. You know, there may be certain rooms that have certain purposes. They can have insulated accordion doors in between them, so that if you eventually have to make them into a classroom, you have that flexibility. You know, open the door and connect 2 rooms together. You also want space on the property that allows you, if we have a really big growth, we might be going back to the state and saying, look at the enrollment has changed so much. We want to do a project and add on to the school. So you need space to add on to the school. And then you might be looking for more money from the taxpayers and from the state bonding to add on to the school.
Michael, can I answer that quickly? Right now, our classroom sizes are fairly small. Say if our classroom size is 16, but it's built that you could squeeze in an extra 4, it doesn't cost us more to add in 4 kids in a classroom. So that's roughly 25%. So we could have 25% growth in the number of kids if it were evenly spread out and not have to build any more extra.
Yes, yes. That's an even better explanation.
Because it's still one teacher to 20 kids, whether it's 16 or 20.
Yes.
And
correct.
it's one teacher actually to 25 kids, right, Phil? It can go up as high as
I'm
that.
not sure exactly what the policy says, the max.
I'm not sure that the people in town would.
I know,
not
but
have a
that's
conversation
neither here nor there. We're talking about all these other things.
The rooms you could fit an extra 4 people in, you know, without creating havoc.
Any more questions or?
Was that per class?
Yeah, in a classroom, just to give you a sense of, in a classroom, you could squeeze in 4 more kids, 25% increase.
Hours per student.
And you do have a few classrooms to account for large swings year over year in enrollment growth in that educational specification already as well.
Right.
So,
One additional elementary.
yeah.
So there is, so basically there's some flexibility built into this proposal. And then there is also another one of the things that's good about this particular piece of property is that the ability to be able to expand. If you watch the presentations from QA&M about the fit studies in the different scenarios, it was very hard to define space on the Hall School property that you could add any more. If we did the renovation, we would already take up more of the land to get both schools where the kids into that property. And then you had the bus lane and the separate car lane for parent drop off, which still had to overlap each other in certain scenarios. Now you look at things like the kitchen doesn't have a loading dock in a Hall School. So everything gets trucked in through the school on hand trucks, like through where the students are on hand trucks. If you put a loading dock in to make that proper and safe, now you've taken another area where you can't put an addition on the school and you don't have any property. One of the many factors that went into this recommendation.
Okay. Other questions on the board? Jeff, got it?
I have a question.
Go
ahead. Oh, you know the buffer that you have in the design here?
The land buffer? Yep.
Yeah. Just for the other people in town, the naysayers, does that always stay as a buffer no matter what? There's no contingency that would help with growth.
No, there's plenty of room to go in other directions.
Yeah,
and the building is not close to that buffer either. So even if you expand it towards the buffer, you're still way away from it.
Way away from it. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
That's again, a value of this piece of property, is that it allows sighting back from the road. It allows keeping woodlands around it.
Yeah.
It allows for a lot of things. It allows property, like I said, to spread out wells for water, so we're not drawing all the water from one
And there's no
location.
water around it, right?
Right. There's a lot going for this, and I will, because and I'm gonna very briefly address the property thing, because that's another hot topic in town. We will, as we talked about at the SBC last night, we're gonna get the matrix, the land assessment matrix, we're gonna get out to the public so they can see how we looked over the 127 different pieces of property. This property certainly has some challenges and extra drama about it because of the ownership. And the fact of the matter is, we got to a point when we were reviewing property that I felt, as the chairman of the land assessment subcommittee, that this had so many positives that I would now not be doing my job if we didn't recommend this. And that was the consensus of the land assessment subcommittee, was this property possessed the features that was the best fit for the taxpayer. So it became our responsibility to put it forward.
Got it.
And I know some people will not ever feel that's a legitimate excuse, and I understand their concern. I have to go on what we believe was the right thing to do, and
Well, you
our
were the
due
committee,
diligence.
right? You were the
And we were the
committee that
we did our due diligence.
Right.
So.
Just to speak to that buffer, wasn't the request from the seller that be 100 feet?
Yes.
So just so everyone knows that. That's worked.
The buffer, the 100-foot buffer of woodland was requested by the seller to protect those neighbors, because they were neighbors of the seller of the
So
property.
I wanted to make sure that that was never a contingent. That's always going to be.
No, the contingency for expansion is in the other direction.
Got it.
Yeah.
So far away from that, right? Okay.
If you look at how that's cited, the fields are cited towards the buffer, which means there would be very limited noise. It would be during the school day typically, maybe a weekend game, but not like at night and all that kind of stuff. And I've already talked to one of the neighbors, and the neighbor said, listen, the school is a great neighbor. They're not going to be playing rock and roll music at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Is that buffer going to be original
Native,
woods?
The native woods.
Native woods?
Yeah.
I just remember the hilltop construction at UConn.
I knew you were going there. I knew
The
exactly because that was the first thing that came to my mind too. Yes. Yes.
Big bad neighbor.
Talk about a debacle. Yeah, let's not talk about that.
Okay.
All right, can I sit down?
Yes, you may. Of course, you could have long ago. Bill, do you have anything to add that, okay?
No.
Yeah, that was a good close, yeah. I wanna, at this moment, I mean, there are a couple of things I wanna bring up that we've shared in documents and that I wanna point out. Let me just grab some stuff here. One is our bond rating, because I guess, just talking about the sort of the low debt quality of the town and the, where we are today as far as, taking on debt. And I just think it's something that this board would have good questions and comments about. So if you guys go to that piece that looks like this, and our rating is AAA 3 under Moody's. And Donna, please dive in anytime you wish. I'm just gonna point out that it's in the second category of credit worthiness. It's the obligor, which is the town of Wellington, has very strong capacity to meet its financial commitments. It differs from the highest rated obligors only to a small degree. So I just want to, yay us. I just want to point that out. We're, as far as rating description, we're in the high grade under the prime category. I think we do have a document, but I think it's multiple pages. So I think it's easier to kind of pinpoint it. But if anyone else has anything to say about our credit rating, Donna or Erica, if you guys wanted to.
Yes, we pay our bills.
Pay our bills.
On time.
We pay our bills on time. I'm in a town with 99% plus really tax collection rate. It's like, who are those 3 people who don't? No, I'm just kidding. Okay, and then we have, let's see. I'm sorry, I've got like so many notes. Just kind of wanted to go to some of the other factors. I mean, one is the fund. I'm not seeing the fund balance here.
It's on a double-sided paper.
Okay.
And it's highlighted at the top.
It's on the back of our bonding capacity sheet.
Okay. Oh yeah, it's double-sided. Okay.
Trying to save those resources.
Sorry. What's that?
Thank you very much. Good job.
Yeah. Yeah, I think I got
It's on my back of the jet.
Someone else can look. Okay, so the fund balance forecast is pretty. It's Donna, you can jump in on this too anytime you want to. But basically the projected forecast for this is by the end of this fiscal year, June 30th, 2023, the fund balance will be at $3,044,483, and that is as a percentage of our expected fiscal year 24, the budget we're working on now, expenditures, budgetary expenditures, it would be 15.5%. The Board of Finance has a long-standing practice of kind of monitoring this so that we're not, over reserving taxpayer funds and stockpiling. That when we get beyond a sort of very healthy, very conservative 8% to 12% over that budget spending, that we go into when we're figuring out the end game of the budget year that we're in now. We will, the budget process that we're in for fiscal year 24, we would look at correcting that.
You were chairman last time we did this, and I'm sorry to break in on you, but it's the same topic.
Okay.
What did we drop it to? Did we drop it to 10?
10, I was going to say that.
Oh, thank you.
But you boys go ahead.
No, don't let it step you. No. So, yeah.
I didn't know you had it there. I knew it.
You didn't know
I got it in my head.
She has it.
I'm sorry, I couldn't help it. Could you shut off the tape? No.
I thought you were going to say.
Stephanie, could you help me answer that question? I'd like to let Pete know.
Oh my God.
Okay, so sorry about that. Donna, do you have anything to add to the fund balance sweetness? I mean, except for the fact that what was applied to this year that we're in when Mike McCoo was sitting here was $490,230. Of that amount, we only spent 8,788. 66. Oh yeah, sorry.
They're forecasted only to need 8,700.
Right, forecast. Yeah. So that gives you an idea of why that percentage figure is so large, but it also, gives you a sense of how the town is operated in such a way that when we come to a big moment of decision, we do have an underpinning that I think we need to be aware of. And I wanted to take a moment to sort of recap that. We also, let's see, I think, is there any other information? I already mentioned that we won't have the grand list figures, but those are likely to be greater, of course.
We hope that. We're not sure. We have no indication yet. So she is working diligent. She was here this evening working diligently.
I know. I'm not sure if it's possible, Erica, but it would really be wonderful to have that for that, before, as we go into that meeting of the 27th
I don't know
together.
that we'll have it, so, right,
We might
we've
not.
been giving them an extension.
And they have the next day.
Right,
Yeah.
and so she is working on it. As soon as I get the information, I will share that information.
Okay.
And so, you know, I hope to have it, but you'll have it when I have it.
I
just
know,
can't promise.
I apologize for our
Okay.
eagerness.
Yeah, I'm eager to, I tread lightly on asking her on the daily for it, because I know she's working hard for it.
Just want to ask the board, we don't have this on our agenda, but I would like to ask Ralph to talk about his calculator. And I think it's, you know, I watched the SBC last night, so I had a peek there, and Jim's seen it, of course, because he was there, but I don't know, but are you guys interested in hearing something?
I always like hearing about Ralph. I'm tired.
I will say thank you to all of you guys for putting in all that.
Yeah.
In general, because both spreadsheets, you know, they show a lot of information, a lot of light that is helpful.
I mean, I'd be happy to demonstrate it, but the reality is it's going to take me a few minutes to get set up because I'm going to have to log in. So
Do you guys have it?
Well,
Do you have some
no,
of that?
I don't have it. But you know, Ralph, I think it might be good to if there's some way can you share it with us, or is it too heavy to for like not now? I mean, after
the problem with the spreadsheet is I really don't want to put it in someone else's hands because
everything's open.
No, I understand how it works,
Mm-hmm.
and there's fields that you can put information in, and if you don't understand how the formulas work, you could get some results that won't make sense.
I already felt like I sort of had to, take a couple more college classes to understand it when I was watching. I thought, oh, wow, I didn't do computer science. I didn't do.
It's just a tool to do a lot of what if scenarios. I built in the ability to change the growth, either, we started off using 2.5% with the SBC for annual growth of the town budget. That's the default. You can make the default value anything you want. You can make it 0, you can make it 2.5, and it applies to every year. Or you can selectively pick years and change that growth. Our budget may go up 5 or 6% in this coming fiscal year. I see a lot of towns around us that are around the 5% number. So you could plug in 5% and see the impact. You could, if you're anticipating a bond for another project, there's a column where you can add that debt service and see the result and the effect on the railway.
It seems to me that it's a
what if kind of tool.
Right, it's a what if kind of tool, but it seems to me that it's a tool that you should, patent and share with someone like, Scott Hellman or because like it's too many. I mean, I said when the latest SBC calculator is good because, it's like, I kind of called it, it's so ugly, it's pretty because it doesn't have any factors or qualifiers that kind of mess with the purity of the cost of the school. Neither does it have, the world of inflation and stuff, but there are widely varying prognostications about that. And I definitely don't have any mystical power to weed those out.
None of us have crystal balls.
Right. So I like the purity of it because I know in my own household what I can handle, what my picture of indebtedness is, and what I can handle tax-wise in the way it's presented. And so my instinct is for people making the decision, that's the superior tool, just because it's mobile for their intellects and their fingertips. But I'm fascinated with what you have, but I also kind of think, I don't know the assumptions that went in it. I don't know what data you use that we're not looking at. It's like too many things to get our heads around. That's my opinion.
Analysis paralysis, Ralph.
And
no, I wouldn't consider that.
Oh, I'm sure you wouldn't.
I'm still curious as hell, but so I'd like to see it on some level. I just not sure how much I can use it or we could use it.
Well, I could, if you have something else to go on to, I could set it up.
What is it?
What else
You
is
guys
it?
flagging yet? You want to do this on another day? Or?
I mean, this is something, you know, I wish some of the folks that were here in the beginning, you know, stayed and saw, you know, saw this whole necessary process, because this is something that should not be taken lightly. This, to quote my favorite former first selectman, this will affect our town now and forever.
To that point, I think it's important to note, just because they left,
No,
doesn't mean that they're not
Well,
watching.
it's hard.
could have
I
joined
don't know.
on,
They're not,
so,
again, I'm not.
right, so people are still paying attention.
They are online.
Correct.
Right.
Yeah. They're on Zoom?
Yeah.
But it is nice to be in person.
Can I leave and go on Zoom? I know, I like the function where you can lay down and not show anybody.
Turn your video off.
I think you can sort of feel the temperature in the room about inability to be intellectually acute enough to take it in tonight. Us. I
Is
mean,
everybody burned?
what's that?
Is that the
Yeah.
point? Everybody's getting a little dark.
Everybody's getting a little. Yeah.
But I am interested, I am.
I mean, I
So
happily
let's-
show it to anyone who wants
Okay.
to see it, but at this hour, do you really want to go there?
I know, I think I like that you rolled up your sleeves and went all in and you're a deadline guy. Because I know you were crunching this, you know.
I had some layouts.
Yeah, yeah. We're all
Ralph,
looking for the same pile of information.
Do we have to do it? Stephanie, do you have to do it as a board presentation, or
no.
can we meet with Ralph at a different time, not at night?
It was on, I mean, he went into detail with it on the SBC.
All right, then we can just look at that first, and then we can ask questions.
Yeah.
I don't know how well it showed up on the screen.
On the
because,
screen, it was pretty good.
you know, I can see it on my screen.
Right, I can see it on mine.
Yeah,
but
the
far away
screen
was
share
mine,
looks
so-
pretty good.
Yeah.
Ralph did run through a few scenarios in the screen share, including putting in some factors of budgeting, predicting out some budgeting, and the effect on the mill rate versus taking out the other budget factors and showing the mill rate.
Right.
Like we did tonight without the other budgeting factors.
Like a real-
Again, keep in mind with all of these tools, none of us can figure out what the next 20 years means for the rest of the town budget.
That's right.
This has some basic assumptions, but it's, you know, growth rate of town government spending is in there. That's what's built in. The ability to add, you know, if you've got another debt service that you need to add in because of a bond, I have a column to plug that in and you see the effect. If you have a one-time hit from some project, pick the year, we can plug it in and see the impact both on the mill rate and on the taxpayers. So
it wasn't basic, Ralph, it was on steroids.
Right.
And I love when Phil said that.
I think, you know, those are great things for us to look at, but all of those things would have to go through a process.
Oh, sure.
To a yes, so we could put them all in because they might be things we all think we need in our community. But that doesn't mean that it would ever happen all in 1 year or even in a 2 or 3 year
Right.
span. So
You
it's
can
a
have
long
anything
process.
and everything, but not at the same
That's
time.
right. So.
So again, what we gave you tonight, was what your new car would cost. We didn't give you your household budget.
And I can match those.
I really thought that was a great
It does.
example,
That
Mike.
your tools are producing.
Yeah.
That was a great example.
About why you isolated it, the car purchase. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
the
then
adding in the 2.5% growth, as I said before, was an effort to try to be more, to show something to the taxpayers that would predict something, to predict that growth. But it became a false narrative because it didn't predict, like I said, the revenue, the use of fund balance, the changes in grand list. We couldn't predict those, so we predicted the negatives. We predicted the higher expenses. We didn't predict the things that might balance that.
I'm speaking.
And on that point, I'd just like to.
Fund balance. Mine will let you put that in too. So if you have a given fiscal year, you want to take something from the fund balance and plug it in.
Right.
It will accommodate that.
Right. that.
Well, judging by the times of day or night he sent me emails, I'm not sure he did sleep.
But one of the things I wanted to mention about the fiscal picture and the, you know, if you don't mind, Phil, is that, you know, our education budget for this budget we're putting together now is weighing in at with an increase of 0.99. So it's under a single digit increase, which that's the biggest driver, of course, of our budget, our annual budget in town. And
You know what Region 19 is?
no,
We have an assumption.
Donna, do you have that?
Yeah, we have an assumption, which is a drop over the previous.
Really? A slight drop.
Yeah,
It's
not a
not
huge amount.
But we've seen multiple numbers over the course of the last month, so.
This was supposed to be a year where a reduction in a
It
change
hasn't
in
been,
balance.
it hasn't been formally set from there.
Yeah.
It hasn't been made public yet.
Well, yeah, I'm using that for context with the 2.5 factor that, you know.
I'm gonna move to adjourn in a minute. Do you want to second it?
Are you guys?
No.
No, we're
Sorry,
listening.
I'm gonna send you to the office in just a minute. What were you gonna say, Phil?
The board is fully aware too, there's an expectation, you're gonna hear this next week, that we anticipate we're gonna be returning this year at least $125,000 as well. So that's on top of.
Is that returning or going to the non?
No, that's afterward, the money.
You fill out
the
those
non-lapsing.
So that 125, because we do have a good buffer in our insurance this year. So add another minimum, we strongly believe, Don and I, a minimum of 125,000 is a safe number that you're going to be able to guarantee is coming back this year. And that's after our $150,000 request for money back into non-lapsing. So
this is certainly a good fiscal year to be.
yeah, so I'll share that next week, just as you were talking about.
Thank you. Yeah, and speaking of the only thing I would say is stuff for the going back to our regular programming next week. That you guys will have, you know, the school budget tomorrow and probably the others, except the probate court figure is the only thing we're missing. So you'll have a week to familiarize yourself with all that for the meeting on the 23rd. And that will be a full agenda, starting with the elected officials' budgets, you know, the registrars, the treasurer.
What are you doing? You cramming in like 10 different?
Well, what's that?
How much are you cramming into that?
Well, it's the smaller elected officials budgets and the BOE, which I can't imagine you're gonna crab about too much.
Oh, stop it.
Stop it.
Oh, he's gonna be mad. I'm gonna pay for that. I know I'm gonna pay for that. Okay, so you guys, but I didn't. I know. No, I know. I'm sorry, Joe.
That's true.
So I didn't want to push.
Let it out later.
I didn't want to push all this out to you right now when you were getting all this other stuff. So, I don't think there's anything for correspondence other than everything that you got on your table. Yeah, present to speak. You guys have all spoken, but do you want to speak? Donna, you look like you're bursting to tell us something. Anyone online? Peter?
Hi.
Hi.
Oh,
Go ahead, Peter.
sorry, I had to connect there. Peter Latinchich, 97 Trask Road. Good to be with you all. I want to comment on the process moving forward, which I think is important to everyone in town. We now know the cost of the project, thanks to the diligence of our superintendent and our school building committee and Phil's great staff. We now need you, the Board of Finance, to add the household budget that Mike so aptly described tonight to what you were presented this evening. I'm hopeful that Ralph's presentation sheds some light on that at a later date, I'm assuming. But I want to stress the importance that once you've all digested, as the Board of Finance, this entire project, and then add in the cost of running the town or the household budget, as Mike calls it, it's important for us, the townspeople, to understand it as well. And the best place to do that, where we always do that, is in our public hearing that precedes the town meeting in our normal format, not this selectman directed referendum that's been described to us this evening. I respectfully disagree strongly, and I've expressed this to my own school building committee, to the Board of Selectmen, and now to you, the Board of Finance, that a public hearing is fundamentally different than a town meeting. It's also quite different than public outreach meetings. The public hearing is where we get the facts, unvarnished by pro or con presentations of whatever that project or spending item may be. And that's important. I always like to remember, as I'm old enough to, Senator Moynihan's often quoted on the Senate floor retort to his Republican colleagues, "You're entitled to your opinion, but not your own facts." And that's quite true here too. And this is the way our budget process always worked. We always got a clear, concise understanding of the budget prior to the town meeting. And that allowed us to go to the town meeting and make educated decisions. I will also point out that it's different in a public hearing because there's nothing curtails discussion. In the town meeting, at any given point in time, someone can call the question and all discussion ends. As we learned recently at a town meeting that we had. So I strongly urge you to do your due diligence, work through all the information that we presented to you, understand yourselves how this project impacts the town, and then present it to us, as you always have, at a public hearing where everyone's voice, as I heard, and I was pleased to hear tonight in the present to speak, everyone's voice is welcome, participation is welcome, and we can get a better understanding of all of this before we make decisions in a town meeting. Thank you so much. Good evening.
Thank you. Anyone else? Nick.
Hey, Nick, Tele 49 Myrtle. I just want to say what Peter had to say there was awesome. It was spot on. I know during town meetings in the past, call the question is called way too early when there was more discussion to be had. And I definitely would like to see a public hearing set up so we don't run into that situation. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, is there anything else from the board? Good and welfare.
Once again, I'm good.
You're good?
And I'm not welfare. There we go.
Did Peter's hand go down or does he want to talk again?
I think it's just, he's just putting it down.
He didn't there.
Takes a minute. Meeting adjourned. 9:40.
Excellent. Oh, now let's see if I can stand up. I think my knees froze.